Okay, it's 1:33. I hope you enjoyed our two uh, business case videos that the project has created in the past, just to entertain you while we wait for for us to start. And so we will. So good afternoon, everyone. We hope you're all doing well and staying healthy. And happy holidays, of course. I am Kiko from the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project, and I'd like to welcome you all to this training webinar with the theme Responsible Tourism through Plastic Upcycling and Waste Management, in partnership with the Philippine Department of Tourism and Clean Our Oceans project, with guest speakers from the Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines. We are pleased to see representatives from the academe, government, civil, and private sectors here, especially the Philippine Hotel Owners Association, Inc., who is also our project partner. So thank you always for your continued support and participation in our training and project activities. So before anything else, let's all pause for a moment for a quick prayer.
Lord, thank you for this day, for the presence of everyone in this call. For once again, we are gathered and given the opportunity to appreciate life and your words. Forgive us for our shortcomings and cleanse our hearts as we learn and live your words and example. Father, bless our endeavors, especially today's meeting. May you guide us in our discussions, and may you enlighten our minds in every decision that we make. Give us your grace that we may effectively do our parts for your greater glory. All this we ask in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay. Amen. Okay. So a few house rules for everyone's reference before we continue. So number one, since we are in a Zoom meeting, kindly mute your mic when not speaking. If we observe any noise from you, because your mic is on during the presentation, so with the power given to us by Zoom, we will mute you. So thank you for your understanding. Number two, there will be time for an open forum, so kindly note down your questions beforehand or send them in the chat box for our panelists to answer. So we encourage to for the latter to type in your questions in the chat box so that we can all see it and we can all take note of it, and then we'll get to it come the panel session. So number three, we'll be having a photo up after the open forum. So giving you guys a heads up, we will ask you to open your cameras later. Number four, this meeting will be recorded for documentation. And number five, participants will be receiving post-training handouts and a recording of this training for your reference. And so we hope that these materials and recording will help you carry over what you will learn today. So we just like to share a quick background of our project and how this training webinar contributes to its goals and objectives. So this training was developed and organized under the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project, which aims to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and increase resource efficiency in the accommodation, the meetings, incentives, conferences, and events sectors, or MICE, cross-cutting their food and beverage operations. So since 2017, this ongoing project is being implemented by the Philippine Center for Environmental Protection and Sustainable Development, Inc., which I represent, and the Philippine Department of Tourism and the UN Environment Program, funded by the Federal Ministry for the Environment, Nature Conservation, and Nuclear Safety of the German government through their International Climate Initiative Program, or IKI for short. So the roadmap for low carbon and resource efficient tourism in the Philippines, as shown on the right side of your screen, is one of the main outputs of the project. It is a strategic document that lays out for the tourism sector how to achieve sustainable tourism in the Philippines and has targets that are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030. So the document proposes four systemic solutions to achieve a more low carbon sector, namely sustainable food value chains, sustainable events, beat pollution, and sustainable energy. So, as you might have guessed it, this training directly supports the beat pollution component in equipping tourism stakeholders with the knowledge to improve solid waste management and eliminate problematic single use plastics from the sector. So, to know more about the project, how it's been supporting businesses and government towards sustainable tourism, and understand how we can further collaborate and support you, please do not hesitate to contact me. So, Nico Valhagen, I am the project officer of this sustainable tourism project, and we can exchange emails or schedule a separate meeting after today. So, without further ado, it is my honor to introduce our Chief of Tourism in our beautiful country, the Honorable Secretary Bernadette Romulo Puya of the Philippine Department of Tourism to deliver the opening remarks. So we will be playing a pre-recorded speech that she sent, and she sends her apologies that she cannot attend today.
I would like to acknowledge the organizers, Forester June Alvarez, Executive Director of the Philippine Center for Environmental Protection and Sustainable Development, Clear Our Oceans Projects, and ASEC Howard Lance Uiking, the Department of Tourism. Speakers, Clear Our Oceans Project Board, Ms. Ana Varona, Founder Co-op, Dr. Arnold Andrew Yappinchay, Founder and Director of Marine Wildlife Watch of the Philippines, Mr. Mark Evidente, CEO to ECHO, World Wildlife Fund for Nature Philippines or WWF Philippines, Miss Melody Melorake, Project Manager, the Sustainable Diner Project, Miss Zarina Constantino, National Lead, No Plastics in Nature Initiative. Special mention to Miss Lenny Fabul, Executive Director of the Philippine Hotel Owners Association, the Reef World Foundation, Samantha Craven, Programs Manager, and Melissa Hobson, Communications Manager. Good day. The Department of Tourism is proud to welcome everyone to the Responsible Tourism Through Plastic Upcycling and Waste Management webinar, which is presented in partnership with the Philippine Center for Environmental Protection and Sustainable Development. Through this afternoon's program, we hope to inform our stakeholders, particularly in the hospitality sector, about the growing scourge of single use plastics, which is taking a heavy toll on our environment, oceans, and on wildlife. An alarming 2015 report by McKinsey Center for Business and Environment and the Ocean Conservancy found that over half of all the plastic that enters the world's ocean comes from just five countries: China, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Knowing something had to be done, the DOT initiated a campaign in 2019 called Save Our Spots, SOS, which brought to the public's attention what they could contribute to become part of the solution. It starts with a mindset to be aware of one's surroundings and to respect the community around you. The movement highlighted the consequences of environmental negligence and how being unmindful of one's waste could negatively impact the entire ecosystem. With Save Our Spots, we were able to forge partnerships with private partners and stakeholders in our destinations who would help us in our goal to reduce waste and protect the environment. Unfortunately, the events of recent months have somewhat complicated these sustainability initiatives. The pandemic has changed almost everyone's behavior and lifestyle. Deliveries instead of dining in restaurants led to an increased plastic packaging consumption. Plastic containers to wrap our utensils and other items such as PPEs are on the rise. This shift is understandable given that most of these products were made in the interim to protect the public. Experts have also noted that the problem is not about the waste produced, but about how it is managed. A WWF study in 2018 revealed that almost 74% of plastic waste in the oceans consists of waste materials that were previously collected but were not properly disposed of. Today's webinar, which features an impressive lineup of speakers, can educate us all about the threat of single use plastics to marine biodiversity, the best practices regarding plastic use, tackling plastic pollution in the hospitality industry, and many more enlightening topics. Being an archipelago, the Philippines has many tourist destinations in our coastal areas, pegged at around 80%. With so many of our sites being close to the water, we must revive and restart our campaign to save our spots and protect them from plastic pollution. Similar to our efforts to revive the tourism industry in the wake of COVID 19, protecting our destinations will need everyone's help and cooperation. Change begins with each one of us, and together, our small acts can collectively make a big difference. Thank you again for your participation in today's webinar. May everyone have an educational, productive, and enlightening session ahead. Maraming salamat po at mabuhay.
Okay. Thank you very much, Secretary, for delivering the opening remarks and for those encouraging words. So we all have to partake in the recovery of the sector and protect the natural beauty of it. So therefore, like all our other training and webinars we organize and conduct, we hope everyone here gains much insight, knowledge, and inspiration to act more sustainably, especially against the plastic pollution problem. And for everyone's clarification, co-op is pronounced as Clean Our Oceans Project and not Clear Our Oceans, just for everyone's reference. So to update everyone as well regarding the program, Sir Mark Evidente will be presenting right before the open forum. So if you have noticed in the poster that we've sent, it was much earlier, but now we moved him before the forum. Okay, so let us start with our first speaker. Let me introduce him. Our first speaker has been involved in marine biodiversity conservation in the Philippines for over 25 years. He is the director and founder of the conservation NGO Marine Wildlife Watch of the Philippines. He has a Doctor of Veterinary Medicine degree from the University of the Philippines and a Master's of Science degree in Aquatic Tropical Ecology from Bremen University, Germany. He has worked with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Biodiversity Management Bureau, as a biologist and WWF Philippines as their Species Conservation Program Director. He sits on the board of other NGOs, including Ballena.org, Reef Check Philippines, Cape Foundation, Responsible Tourism Philippines, and Society for Sustainable Tourism. He is a member of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature Species Specialist Group on Sirenians, an adjunct assistant professor at the University of the Philippines in Los Baños, sits on the editorial board of the Philippine Journal of Fisheries, and is part of the Philippine Aquatic Red List Committee of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources. He's here to talk about the threat of single-use plastics to Philippine marine biodiversity, Dr. Arnel Andrew, or better known as Dr. A.A. Yaptin Chai.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you all for being here and coming here and being interested. Let me share with you my presentation. So this afternoon, I will be talking about the threat of solid waste, particularly plastic, single-use plastic waste pollution in our oceans. Okay, so the title of my presentation is Marine Pollution versus Marine Biodiversity. I'm a marine biologist. I run an NGO focusing on marine wildlife. Um, so the focus of this talk will be oceans, the seas, and marine biodiversity. Not to downplay the importance of the terrestrial ecosystems, the terrestrial habitats, and terrestrial biodiversity here in the Philippines, because that sector of our environment is equally important uh, to our natural heritage. Um, but when we talk about biodiversity, we're talking about the number of species present in a location. So it's about species richness. And when we talk about the species, we're saying each and every species in that habitat or ecosystem is very important. I'll get to that in a bit. The Philippines is an archipelago, as we all know. We're surrounded by seas and oceans. Um, Globally, we're recognized as top in the global marine biodiversity throughout the world. So, meaning when we look at or compare the Philippines or the region where the Philippines is to the other regions in the world, there we're recognized to have the most number of marine species. So, as you've seen in this previous slide, the more red the area is, the more important it is in species richness. So as you can see, like the orange red part would sort of form a triangle, and as a conservation uh, program, we've identified this location as the coral triangle. So the coral triangle again is the center of the world's marine biodiversity. There's no other place on earth as important as in this region. And as if you look at this triangle, what country sits in the apex of the triangle? It's the Philippines. So if we look at this map, for example, again, the darker the red color, the more important it is in species richness. So the Philippines is even top within the coral triangle itself. So when we talk about species richness, what are we talking about? We're talking about species of corals, species of fish, species of snails and mollusks, starfish, not only animals but also seagrass, mangrove, and all associated species. Most which are found in our coral reefs. So we have plenty of islands. Most are surrounded by fringing reefs. That's why the Philippines is quite important in the scuba diving industry. So when we talk about tourism, that's the focus of your work or your involvement. Um, and we're all familiar with it's more fun with in the Philippines promo. But I would say that biodiversity puts the fun in Philippine tourism. As I said, like scuba diving is quite important, and if you talk to any scuba diver, or if some of you are scuba diver, if you're still not, then I recommend you take up scuba lessons soon. Um, if you check their bucket list, then some of the most important species in that list can be found in the Philippines. So usually these are like big wildlife you find in the Philippine seas, including manta rays, sharks. Whale sharks are quite important or popular in the Philippines, turtles, etc. But recently, the Philippines has also been an important scuba diving destination for what we call muck diving. Muck diving means looking at smaller organisms. Sometimes you would need a magnifying glass to find them, but they're very interesting. Some of the examples are seen in this slide, and the Philippines is becoming one of the more important uh, dive destinations for muck diving within the Coral Triangle, I would say. So when we talk about again species richness and marine ecosystems, they're very important. like the health of our planet and the health of all human beings relies on the balance of our nature. And when we talk about ecosystem and species within this ecosystem, we derive a lot of services from them, from the air that we breathe. I don't know if someone told you this already, but 50 to 75% of the air, oxygen that we breathe, they don't come from rainforests. They come from the ocean, produced by phytoplankton. Okay, so even like in conservation, they always say like every second breath you take comes from the ocean. So it's important for life. We derive food from our ecosystem. Fish, we derive medicine from marine organisms, and for example, reefs in our coastal area, they protect our coast also, together with mangroves, for example. So if there are strong typhoons, for example, a healthy mangrove coastal area would definitely protect an area from storm surges, for example. And we've seen that happen in past calamities here in the Philippines. So if you look down on on the slide also, um, one of the services that our ecosystem provides would be for recreation or cultural benefits, and also tourism. So I guess that's what would interest us today. When we look at the health of our marine ecosystems, there are so many threats. And some of the global threats that have been identified would include, for example, climate change affecting seawater levels. Um, there's also the threat of overfishing. Most of our fish stocks around the world are already overfished to feed the population. And I guess the tourism sector um, also plays a role in this. There are other complicated theories. For example, ocean acidification. The oceans are becoming more acidic. Some parts of our oceans are also being depleted of oxygen. So all of these would affect life, mostly negatively. And one of the concerns for our today's topic would of course be pollution. And when we talk about marine pollution, we're talking about different causes. So I'm just giving you a list here. So sedimentation is a form of pollution when mud or sediments from deforested areas are washed to the ocean, um, causing a plume of sediments in our water. So mud goes to the ocean. So that's a form of pollution. Agricultural runoffs, including fertilizers and pesticides. The energy sectors, from coal plants to thermal energy industries, also pollute. Sewage from cities, households, towns are affecting our marine environment. Chemicals, oil. Uh, we even have like biological threats, including invasive organisms, even noise and light pollution in some parts of our ocean is becoming an issue. And again, our topic for today would be solid waste and or marine debris because it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem. So what would be the sources of marine litter? So as I said, um, from cities to industries to your household, from flushing the toilet, from using your sink, uh, it all affects our marine environment. I mean, what we do in this in um, our habits are affecting the marine environment. So we'll go to this in more detail. So when we're talking about waste or solid waste or marine litter in our marine environment, um, we can classify them in sizes. So they can be large or medium or small. So when we talk about large things, we're talking about fishing nets, a tire, for example, which is common. As a scuba diver, I can attest to that. You see bicycle tires and car tires underwater. Um, Medium sizes would include our plastic bags or sandbags, for example, and we have the small ones up to the microscopic level, which would include um, beads we find in cosmetics, plastic beads, and also fibers from our clothing, from especially from polyester material. So we're talking about biodiversity now and marine litter, so that in the context of you in the tourism industry would realize like why are we doing this anyways. So it's not just um, for aesthetics or for the smell, or we want to look uh, like everything to look nice, to be presentable to our clients and guests, but there are like more important, deeper reasons why we should actually be concerned about plastic pollution. Um, in 2025, it is estimated that there will be a ratio of 1 to 3 plastic or tons of plastic in the ocean compared to fish. And by 2050, it's estimated that there'll be more plastic in our oceans than the amount of fish swimming in the seas. So that's very alarming. So this is happening because plastic do not biodegrade. They remain in our environment for a long, long time. So for several generations, actually. So as you can see in this slide, some types of plastics can last up to 500 years in the environment. And this is a problem for biodiversity because they affect our different species and their habitats in various ways. So we have four here. One is when these animals ingest or eat the plastic, they could die. We'll go into this in more detail. They can be also be entangled in fishing nets. Trash can also damage the habitat that they're in. And floating plastics, for example, is a vessel in a way where organisms can attach and they can transport organisms um, to different areas of the world where they shouldn't be. And when that happens, we call this species alien invasive species because they would affect um, an ecosystem where they don't belong to really, but introduced through by riding these plastics floating in the ocean, they can affect other ecosystems negatively. So I've been documenting what's been going on with fish and marine wildlife and plastics and I mean just Google and look at the news and you can see like a hermit crab which usually uses a snail shell as a home are now using like plastic bottles as an alternative. Um, Crabs are swimming in plastic cups. Uh, Marine species have been known to ingest various plastics, which cause the death of these animals. So very alarming. Some studies show, for example, all marine turtles, or at least a sample of the population of marine turtles globally, found that plastic has been ingested by each and every turtle swimming in the ocean. In Indonesia, I think this was 2 years ago. They the infographic on the right would show you from this sperm whale how many plastic pieces were found in its stomach, and it died. And that's how they were able to open up the animal and find 115 plastic cups, 25 plastic bags, 4 plastic bottles, 4 chinelas, and 1,000 plus other pieces of plastic. So animals do die from ingesting plastic because aside from not being biodegradable, you cannot also digest them. So this has been documented in a lot of areas in the world. So these are just some alarming examples of what's happening in Thailand, in the Philippines. We just see animals dying and finding out that one of the contributory causes to their death would be the ingestion of plastic material. Uh, but having seen that, I would also like to say that almost 50% of the problem plastics that we find in the ocean are also coming from fishing gear that are left in the ocean actually. So meaning they become disposable or uh, a one-time use thing, or if they are lost at seas or they have no use anymore, sometimes the fishing industry would just leave them in the ocean, and this becomes a problem because made out of nylon and plastic can take like 500 years for this to disintegrate, but in the meantime it's there for 500 years, so it would destroy coral reefs. For example, it can entangle large animals, small animals. A lot of marine wildlife, for example, are air breathing. For example, turtles and whales and dugongs, they need to go to the surface and breathe air. They get entangled in discarded nets, then they drown and die. And if they disintegrate or uh, under the ocean, the plastic or the nylon net is still there, and it will still kill more animals throughout its life cycle. So these discarded nets, we actually have a term for it. They're called ghost nets. Um, of course, there's like too much plastic. This is an actual photo from Manila Bay. You can actually walk on plastic trash already. So many. But if you have tons and tons of trash in our coastal area, they do go to the bottom also. Not only microplastics, but the medium size and the large plastics as well, and they smother habitats. So imagine in Manila Bay, I'm assuming they have like 10 feet of plastic waste over the sandy bottom or the muddy bottom of Manila Bay. So that would just smother and kill all organisms living in the substrate. Um, because of the ocean currents also, um, there has been like 5 areas in the different oceans of the world where all this floating plastic trashes are concentrated. Uh, in the Pacific, there are 2. In the Atlantic Ocean, there are 2. In the Indian Ocean, there's 1. So, and these are not coming from the middle of the ocean, but they're coming from countries such as the Philippines and are brought by currents to the middle of the ocean, where they tend to concentrate. So it's like a plastic soup in these gyres, as we call them. So when we talk about fish as an example of a species, for example, uh, studies have shown that like more than 70% of even deep sea fishes would have eaten plastic already. When they sampled fish in the market, more than 50% are found with plastic. And looking at specific species, for example, anchovies or dilis as we call it, they've also have been eating plastic because they're just swimming in plastic soup right now. Uh, Having estimated that there are about like 51 trillion microplastics in our oceans today. So microplastic is more difficult to manage because we cannot just net them out of the sea. Most of them, aside from coming from cosmetics, like micro beads, so you need to check your beauty products, for example. If your facial wash would have beads, most likely it's going to be made out of plastic. Otherwise, it would be indicated if it's coming from, I don't know what they use, almond shells or ground coffee, etc. And polyester and synthetic fabrics also has been a cause of a lot of these microplastics. So they're more difficult to manage because they're not even visible. Um, so what I'm one of the why microplastics are a big problem. You can see, for example, in front of you, we have a beautiful coral reef with colorful corals. So corals are not rocks, but they're living organisms. So those yellow flower-like petals you see are actually arms and tentacles of what we call a polyp. So the Philippines, of course, is known for high diversity of coral species, and this is an example of a polyp. So they feed on microorganisms, mostly plankton, phytoplanktons, and zooplankton. So it has been found that even the polyps of corals, they've been ingesting or eating this microplastic. So since they cannot digest or derive nutrients from microplastic, they tends to affect their overall health and they could eventually die. I mean, aside from the fact that larger plastics can just bury them in feet in under plastic. Um, when we talk about food webs and food chains, which is an integral process in our ecosystems. The most basic components would be in the marine ecosystems would be our plankton. So they are like, if you compare it to the terrestrial environment, parang they're the grass of our oceans. And a lot of organisms would be feeding on the grass. Um, so one of these organisms would be zooplankton, which forms the base of our marine food web. Also, um, zooplankton has been shown, as seen in this slide, that the neon green part, those are microplastics. So the zooplankton, which are microscopic, are eating these microplastics. So which is concerning because if you look at the bigger ecosystem, all this zooplankton forms the the base of our food chain. So meaning larger or small fish would eat the zooplankton, and larger fish would eat the smaller fish, and whales would eat the bigger fish, including carnivorous fish that we eat, like tuna and sharks, for example. Whales would eat this fish, and some whales would even feed on zooplankton directly. So the microplastic just does not end with a zooplankton eating it, but it gets transferred throughout the food web or the food chain. So as I said, like microplastics are like not digested properly, so they can be excreted out, but that's if they are not excreted, then it can cause impaction in the animal, in the organism, and it will cause its death. But more importantly, the microplastics are also carriers of various chemicals. Most are toxic to life and the environment. And when they get ingested by marine organisms, these toxins are absorbed by the body or they're transferred, for example, into muscles. So we have process called bioaccumulation when microplastics with these toxins are consumed by smaller organisms. The higher it goes to the up the food chain, up to the top predators, it magnifies the toxicity or the concentration of these chemicals. So when we eat our carnivorous fish, as I mentioned earlier, for example, tuna, uh, they would have very high concentrations of these toxins. Um, so yeah, it's becoming a problem. Marine organisms are swimming in plastic soup. They're starting to eat plastic, absorbing their toxins. So when you buy fish, you don't need the bag anymore because you can find the plastic bag in the fish. And which brings me to, are we eating plastic already? So these are some news reports that we've seen. Sea salt, of course, that I forgot which areas in the Philippines. Calatagan, I think they're doing this, producing salt from evaporation of seawater. Microplastics can be found in salts produced in the Philippines, for example. Filter feeders, for example, like bivalves, like tahong, oysters, would be filtering water with microplastics. So obviously, shellfish would have plastics in them. This was study in the UK, I think, um, that even in processed products like beer uh, would have pieces of plastics in them. So like a person would be ingesting every week these amount of pieces of plastic if they in their drinking water, in seafood, if they drink beer, and in the salt that they use. So definitely, plastics in the marine environment is affecting various sectors, including shipping, fishing, aquaculture, recreation, and of course, we're all concerned about the tourism. And as mentioned by Secretary earlier, like it's not the waste that we produce, but how it is managed. So this slide is showing you where plastics are not managed properly, and if they're not managed properly, they usually end up in our oceans. So the Philippines is in the yellowish, so mid mismanaged plastic, but as mentioned earlier, also we're also been identified as the top three ocean polluter in the world, next to China and Indonesia. So I think this typical site is one of the esteros in Manila, obviously, and the problem has been identified because trash have been collected usually, and the problem lies in where we put the collected trash in. So open dump sites are a problem, and this one of the studies shows that some of the haulers bring the plastics or illegally dump them in sites close to water bodies, including rivers and in coastal areas. Uh, there has been a study also showing how much of these different types of plastics are used by Filipinos, and they're in the millions. And number one would be sachets. Sachets, or sachet economy, tingi tingi that we have in our sari-sari stores, more affordable for daily use, but more expensive in the long run than when we buy in bulk. So in the Philippines, it's sachets, plastic sando bags that we use in palenques, plastic labo bags, and even disposable diapers in the millions per day. These are the top 10. Uh, we have like a coastal cleanup event once in a while, and there's an international coastal cleanup every September, I think. And the trash collected in our coastal areas would be composed of these top 10 items, from food wrappers, from cups and plates, straws, cigarette butts, etc. Um, so I guess that covers all the like plastic and solid waste problems, but just to show you, there are other sources of pollution that's not plastic. So we're concerned now about pandemics, so diseases or pathogens in the water, mga fertilizer which causes nutrification of our marine habitats, sediments, radioactive compounds, and even oil and other inorganic pollutants. So I'm just showing you a list, and most of the time the sources would be industrial agriculture, domestic sewage, uh, as a cause, as a source of these other uh, of as a source of these other pollutants. Uh, Again, it's how we manage uh, this problem, and we do have laws against marine litter, and I just want to breeze through the most important ones. One would be the ecological solid waste management program. So we do have one, and if we only follow it strictly, then probably we wouldn't have any problem, solid waste problem. Another important one would be the Clean Water Act, uh, which is one of the laws, and we also have a Clean Air Act, actually. So we have the laws. We just need to improve on the mechanism on how we manage our trash. So I would say preventing trash from ending up in the ocean is better than and more cost effective than cleaning it up. So these are, for example, just some of my thoughts, my recommendations. We need to raise awareness. We need more research. We need to enforce our laws. We need to change systems and behaviors of everyone. We need to make producers of the trash be responsible for this. We need economic incentives. Maybe bans would be helpful in a way. We need to invest in mechanisms how to manage more trash. So when we want to manage trash, we were talking about sustainability, and the United Nations, of course, has their sustainable development goals, and my NGO and co-op were concerned about life below water. And if you can see, as a target 14, the first one, of course, would be to reduce marine pollution. Uh, because to have a healthy planet, we need our healthy ocean, and to have our healthy ocean, we need to manage all sectors of human activities um, happening around it. And we need to coordinate well and be coherent about it, as reported by the UN World Oceans Assessment in 2015. So just to leave you with some breathtaking pictures, all which were taken here in the Philippines, tourism and marine wildlife. We have dolphin watching in the Bohol Sea. We have whale shark interaction in Donsol, Sorsogon. We have diving with thresher sharks in Munad Shoal in Cebu, swimming with snorkeling with turtles in Apo Island in Negros Oriental, and we even have humpback whales in up north in the Babuyan Islands, dugongs in Davao Oriental. So all of these are threatened because of pollution and plastic. So I hope we understand we're not just doing this in the tourism sector to protect our business, but to protect our marine environment and the health of our oceans. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Doc AA, for your presentation. A lot of interesting and shocking facts that some I'm sure we've come across in the past, in the news, on TV, and social media. So, being that plastic problem is a very big problem, and so it's best to stay aware, remind others of these things, do more research, as you mentioned, and do be more responsible. And lastly, always communicate, so among others. So I like that. One line that you pointed out, Doc A, is that health of human beings lies in the health of nature and the ecosystem. So I hope that that cascades, not beyond, of course, just this training, and in the context of where we are right now within this pandemic. So okay, so for our next speaker, we move on to the second topic. Our next speaker. Oh, so just a reminder, everyone, to put your questions in the chat box, and we will take note of it and we'll go through it later on during the panel session. So our next speaker has been involved in community projects for 13 years. He is the founder and CEO of Clean Our Oceans Project, an NGO who advocates for the conservation and protection of the marine environment by teaching responsible consumer behavior and providing infrastructure, empowering communities to manage their plastic waste responsibly. Under her leadership, Clean Our Oceans Project forged partnerships with Ayala Alabang Village, Ayala Southville, Baseco, Nestle Philippines, Ayala Infra, and ST Lauder, to name a few. She is a technical diver, underwater photographer, and videographer, and worked with NGOs like WWF and UNDP to document marine protected areas in the Philippines. She was also a host for a TV show called Last Wild Place that explored far flung areas in the country while advocating for low carbon footprint tourism. So she will talk about tackling plastic pollution in the hospitality sector. Miss Anna Baron.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Kiko, for that introduction. Yes, um, I am a technical diver, and I'm also a advocate for responsible tourism. I will be talking to you all about how Clean Our Oceans Project has tackled community or consumer plastics through the years. Okay. So I'll share with you first a video of the ideal situation that you would see underwater. Philippines is we are like what Kiko said. No, I've been part of a team to assess marine protected areas and marine sanctuaries, and I also work with WWF and UNDP in this regard. I was made to take videos and pictures of underwater environment here in the Philippines. Some were great, but some were not so great. And most of the time, I would get out of a boat and I would land on a shore that's full of plastics. So this alarmed me. Now, people ask me, why would I choose to advocate for the ocean and not land? Okay, but first of all, kasi ang feeling ko, when you advocate for the ocean, you also advocate for terrestrial for the land, no, because 71% of the planet is actually covered with water. 71%. So that means land is 29% of the planet, diba? So I'm focused more on the water because it has more coverage. The ocean, as Doc AA has said, provides us with the following. It provides us with air, food, medical breakthrough, protection, water, and of course, beauty. Diba? We can't forget beauty naman because many of us go to the beach and then feel like we're very happy, diba, when we get to the beach kasi ang ganda-ganda talaga naman ang dagat. So air. The oceans absorb more than 50 times more carbon than the atmosphere. So basically, the ocean actually helps clean the air. It also provides us with air, okay? Plants in the ocean produces half of the world's oxygen and also, yan na nga, absorbs carbon dioxide. So whatever it is that comes out of your cars, your motorcycles, the factories, ang nag-absorb nun, karamihan, ay yung ocean. So that's why I'm an advocate for the ocean. It also provides us with food. Ocean fishing accounts for 80% of the world's fish catch. So, yung mga malalaking nakikita niyo yung mga isda, yung malalaking tuna, malalaking marlin, galing yan lahat sa karagatan. That cannot come from inland fishing because inland fishing will just be too small. So, only 5% of the fish catch comes from inland fishing and 15% comes from aquaculture. So, think about that, ha? 80% ng ating kinakain na isda, ng mga hipon, ng mga mollusk, ay galing lahat sa karagatan. The ocean provides us with medical breakthrough. See, there is so much to learn about the ocean. We know more about outer space than we do underwater, okay? But recently, they've discovered that coral reefs are sources of new medicines being developed to treat cancer, arthritis, human bacterial infections, Alzheimer's disease, heart disease, viruses, and other diseases. So corals are so important for the survival and the health of our people. It also provides us with protection. Coral reefs provide a buffer protecting our coast from waves, storms, and floods. It helps prevent loss of life, property damage, and erosion. Alam nyo, sabi nila, yung Philippines hindi natatamaan ng tsunami. Bakit? Lalo dun sa eastern side, nandun kasi yung mga coral reefs. Nandun lahat yung mga layers and layers upon layers of coral reefs. Kaya hindi tayo natatamaan daw ng tsunami. Hindi tulad ng Indonesia at saka ng Japan na palagi na lang nagkakaroon sila ng tidal wave doon, di ba? The ocean provides us with water. Hello, do I have to explain this? I don't think so. Kasi saan pa tayo kukuha na maiinom natin na tubig, di ba? The ocean also provides us with beauty. So I will show you some pictures that I took in the marine protected areas that I was so honored to have been able to visit. This is a school of barracudas in Tingloy, Batangas at Batalang Bato. This is just one part of the picture when actually in front of me, there were also a school of surgeonfish. And then below us, after a while, was a school of butterfly fish. This was taken in Tubataca, is our largest marine protected area in the Philippines, which is over 1 million hectares. So there you see a school of trevally trying to lead their own lives, but then a shark is there pretending to be a trevally, preying on them because it's a predator. So it's probably looking for food. This is in Cagayan Silio. where the reefs are practically covered from top to bottom with coral. It is one of the most amazing sights I've ever seen. And even down below at 80 meters, you could tell na covered din siya ng coral reefs. Ito po yung this is Manukan, also in Cagayan Silio, which like 18 years ago was devastated by dynamite fishing. But because it was legislated to be a marine protected area, human activity was limited. So walang fishing allowed doon. The coral reefs were allowed to grow back. Basically, humans gave the power over to Mother Nature to restore the reefs. So now it's filled up. Siksik na siksik sila, nakakatuwa. Ayan pa, this one was taken at 48 meters below in Cagayan City also. Ang ganda niya, no? Very vibrant ang life underwater pag inaalagaan at pinababayaan ng natin. Ngayon, ang problema, ito yung binabawi natin sa coral reefs. We dump our waste in the ocean, okay? 80% of marine litter is plastic. So, Clean Our Oceans Project decided to tackle plastic pollution. And how did we do it, no? We also realized kasi that most plastics do not decompose. So, we needed to do something about this. If they do decompose, they break down in what's called microplastics. Can you take a look at this? Ayan, no? Nakita niyo, nagsisiksik yung plastic doon sa gitna ng mga coral reefs. Nung last year, when we did our cleanup dive, for one day, we were able to pick up 120 kilograms of plastics. The year before that, we picked up more than 75 kilos of plastics. And this was the dive that we did it in.
You see it? Yeah, this is what I find a lot of down there. It's Cisco and
So nakikita ho ninyo na hindi po basta, sandali lang po. So on an average, ito po yung kinakain noon ho natin, di ba? Na-explain no ni Doc AE kanina how plastics enter our food chain. And if you think about it, on an average, 100 concentrated microplastic compositions are found in each mollusk. Hindi yan isang batch ng mollusk. That's one mollusk each. This was done by the research of the Laboratory of Environmental Toxicology and Aquatic Ecology of Belgium. So, hindi lang maliliit na hayop ang naapektuhan tungkol sa plastic pollution, kundi pati yung malalaki din. This whale was found beached in Davao, and after the necropsy, they shared the results with us. In the necropsy, there were 40 kilograms of plastic bags, 16 rice sacks, 4 banana plantation-style bags, and multiple shopping bags inside the whale's body. Yan po equivalent kunwari sa katawan ko. No? I'm 130 pounds. I'm 5'6". Basically, parang kumain ako ng 12 family-size pizza. Ganun ho yung kadami in percentage yung kinain na ingest na plastics nitong whale na to. So imagine na lang ho ninyo kung kayo ho yung kumain ng plastics, di ba? So mamamatay din tayo. So 700 marine creatures are going extinct because of plastic pollution. And why is this alarming? This is really scary for the future. Because the marine ecosystem is like a machine. It's an oxygen, air, and water machine. It creates all of these things that we need to survive, and we need every living creature. Kunwari po, di ba, meron tayong nakikita mga bato sa ilalim ng dagat. Kala ho natin bato lang ho yan, pero hindi po. That's a very important structure underneath the water because that's where the food and some organisms live. This food is eaten by tiny little things called we call it like in photography, the micro and the macro, like the tiny shrimps and the tiny fishes. And then these tiny fishes and tiny shrimps, they also live, and then we have the coral reefs. In the coral reefs, where we are the places where fish and organisms can live. Parang barangay. Doon sila tumitira. Doon sila natutulog, doon sila kumakain, doon sila lumalaki, tumatanda at nagkakababy. So pag nagkakababy sila, dumadami ho ang isda. Pero syempre, after a while, pag malaki-laki na sila, kinakain naman sila ng mga ibang fish, ng ibang predator fish. So predator fishes are like necessary to keep the population, to manage the population also of the smaller fish. Then we have the huge mammals like the whales, which are my favorite animals. They eat a lot. Okay, they eat a lot. They eat all sorts of things. Yun na nga, nakita natin, pati plastic, nakakain na, no? Pero they eat all sorts of things. And so when they eat a lot, they poop a lot. So maraming poop po yan, no? Lumulutang-lutang sa ibabaw ng ocean. Pero sabi ni Mother Nature, we cannot leave it that way. So what does she do? Mother Nature is the best designer ever. She's the best engineer. So what does she do to manage the waste of the whale poop? She created plankton or Posidonia, so that this plankton, they love to eat whale poop. They're like the plants of the ocean. Di ba po dito sa land, sabi nga nila yung fertilizer ng mga plants, yung mga tayo ng baboy, tayo ng manok, ganyan. Sa ocean po, yung plankton mahilig sa whale poop, sa fish poop. So kinakain nila ho yan. Pag sila ho ay busog na, of course, kailangan nila mag-release. Di ba ho? Pag tayo ho po ay busog, kailangan natin mag-release. Ganon din ang plankton. Pag nag-release mo ang plankton, ang nire-release ng plankton ay oxygen at air. sino ho ang nakikinabang doon? Kundi tayo at saka yung mga halaman at saka yung mga animals dito sa ating planet Earth. So basically, ang hinihinga ho natin ay utot ng plankton. Di ba ho? Okay, thank you. Sayang I don't hear the laughter. I'm not used to this. I will show you another effect of climate change to the ocean. What causes climate change? Climate change is caused by pollution, okay, and overpopulation. Now, our proposed action sa Cleaner Oceans Project was to refuse, reuse, rethink, recycle, or upcycle plastics. Kasi yung main pollutant talaga is plastic eh. Which is a sad thing kasi plastic was actually created in order to save animals. During the time when people were slaughtering elephants, rhinoceros, carabao, turtles for their shells and their horns, a man created what is called bakelite. 1907 ito. Para they would stop slaughtering the animals for their horns. These horns were used to make piano keys, yung keys po sa piano, billiard balls, handles for weapons, handles for doors, a lot of things. So imbes na patayin dapat yung animals na yun, yung bakelite na lang gagamitin sana. So that was his purpose for making plastic. But instead of it saving the animals, it started to pollute the earth. And the sad part there is, if only we started recycling from that time, then we wouldn't have this problem right now. 1960s, we saw a big boom in the use of plastics. In fact, dun sa giant garbage patch na makikita ho nila dun sa different areas in the Philippines, in the world, like near Hawaii, Japan, they could find plastics that were made during the 1940s pa, and like in good condition. So that is the main quality of plastic, which made it ideal for human use, is the biggest thing that destroys the ocean. So another proposed action, of course, is not to just focus on businesses, but we also focus mainly on consumers, manufacturers, businesses, and government. All of this sector should cooperate with each other to tackle plastic pollution. Kasi hindi ko pwede na lang tayo basta-basta pupunta ng Nestle at i-insist sa kanila na tumigil ang plastic production. Bakit po? Dahil po sa isang, lalo na sa Philippines, no, we followed the life of a tricycle driver and how much he made in the day. So, nagbayad siya ng 30 pesos per load, nagbayad siya ng 50 pesos for gas, bumili siya ng pagkain para sa kanyang 6 na pamilya, it was at 300 pesos, and then bumili siya ng toiletries. Ang toiletries, syempre, ang pinakahuli niyang priority. Dahil unahin niya, syempre, gas, load, tubig, pagkain. Doon pa lang, naka 400 plus na siya. So, ma-afford lang talaga niya, sachet. So, pag ang plastic products po, tinanggal ho natin sa packaging, tayo rin ang magbabayad. Magiging mahal. Dahil kaya nga ho ang mga gamit na package in glass or in bakal, mas mahal. So, pag mas mahal yon, tayo ang magbabayad, maraming hindi makaka-afford. Yan. So yun. So mahirap talaga ho na ipigil ang plastic packaging. So ang kailangan ho natin gawin, ginawa ho ng Cleaner Oceans Project, binalik ho namin yung responsibilidad doon sa mga tao na may hawak ng plastic at gumagamit sila sa plug ng plastic. We started using the word upcycling because we pressured one of the manufacturers of plastics to take back the plastics that they create and bring out to the market and make it into other durable products. Basically, keeping it within the circle of man, dun sa use ng man. Hindi siya nag-end up dun sa landfill. So, upcycling is the process of turning things into other greater items of greater value. Our upcycling partners are like food space, for food waste is green space, for sachets is green as, and for plastics are Sentinel upcycling technologies. Yung green space po, yung food waste, ginagawang compost. Yung green ads po, yung sachets, ginagawang building bricks at saka pavers. Yung Sentinel, they use the plastics to make chairs, tables, bins, glasses, other things. You know, over the course of the 3 years, they have expanded how much plastics products, durable plastic products, they make out of the plastics that we collect. Yan po yung kanilang ginagawa. May crates, may bricks, at may compost. Yung bucket po ng green space na food waste, for food waste, yung lid po niyan is made with the plastics that we collect. So it doesn't end up in the ocean. Yon. How do we do this? First of all, Cleaner Oceans Project has a co-op method which requires that the plastics be clean, dry, and sorted. Hindi ho lang pwedeng basta-basta ho natin tatambak o itatapon sa basurahan para ma-pick up ng basurero. We require people to gather their plastics, clean it, and make it dry. It is really not hard to do, especially kung pag naubos na si Sprite, o di i-rinse lang, pwede na yon. Basta matanggal karamihan ng asukal o kaya ng oil. Yan. Tapos i-sort siya into different kinds of plastics because plastics come in different kinds of resins. Cleaner Oceans Project collects plastics type 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and 7. We cannot collect PVC because it's the most toxic plastic, and we still use heat injection in order to produce the durable plastics that our upcyclers make. Okay? So progress namin, nung unang year ho namin ng 2017, ang Cleaner Oceans Project was able to sign up Ayala Labang Village and Nestle to do the co-op method, which is clean, dry, sort, collect, and then we had 2 drop-off points. And from December 2018, we were able to collect 3.2 tons of plastics. 3.2 tons po. That's during our first year. 2019, ang nangyari po niyan, dumami yung partners namin at nakapaggawa ho ang Sentinel ng 11 ng how many 230 armchairs, which used up about 11,000 tons of plastics collected. So that's 11,000 tons, 11 tons of plastic, 11 tons of plastics kept away from the ocean. January 2019 to January 20, Cleaner Oceans Project was able to collect 14 tons of plastics for upcycling. So 14 tons were prevented from polluting the ocean. Nagkaroon ho kami ng 7 drop-off points. At sa drop-off points na yon, lahat ho ng plastics na na-collect namin ay clean, dry, and sorted. But because of COVID-19, all of this had to stop. We had to stop from March to August, no, of 2020. So what did we do? We cannot stop. We cannot give up. We have to push on, di ba? So when GCQ was implemented, we were able to move a little bit more. But let me explain to you the impact of COVID-19 on plastic use. In China, single-use face mask production soared to 116 million yan per day in February. That's about 12 times the usual quantity. Can somebody compute what 160 million per 60 million times 30 is? So that's how many face masks are made, di ba? Tapos, of course, packaged takeout meals and home-delivered groceries contributed to an additional 1,400 tons of plastic waste during Singapore's 8-week lockdown. That's just 8 weeks, 1,400 tons of plastic waste. So this leaks into our food chain kasi we don't have the infrastructure to manage PPEs. So you'll see it on parking lots, you'll see it dumped on the ocean. This is beside a river. We took this. Scenario 2, the plastic pandemic. Lockdown. So syempre, naapektuhan lahat ng businesses, and that includes plastic production. So the lockdown caused a decrease in fuel consumption. So naging mura ang gas, di ba? Ngayon, ang nangyari niyan, to make products using recycled plastics has become more expensive than virgin plastic. Mas mura pang bumili ng bagong plastics kaysa sa plastics na kinolekta galing sa mga community. So challenge namin din yon. It costs 83 to 93% more. Ang sakit, di ba? Ang sakit. So yung manufacturers ay na tumanggap ng consumer plastics. Parang hindi sila motivated. So how are organizations like us gonna run, di ba? That's another problem. So naging sakit to ngayon. Masakit niyan, syempre, we have to keep in mind consumer plastics end up in landfills and eventually in the ocean. Then here, situation 3, how did plastic behavior change? According to data from Nielsen, items like hygienic and medical mask sales are up by more than 300%. Understandable, di ba? It's so understandable. Masks have to be managed by the users so that they could get the maximum protection from it. So ang pinakamaganda supposedly ay yung may HEPA filters. Tapos, yung mga surgical mask ang pinakamaganda rin daw. O kaya yung K95, N95 ang pinakamaganda rin daw. What are these all made of? It's made out of plastic. And more often than not, we are encouraged to use it like once every week. So kada labas natin, isang beses lang, sa isang linggo natin gagawin yun. So gagamitin, meaning during the day, isa lang ang mask na gagamitin nyo. Hindi pwedeng pabalit-palit. Yon. So that's 1 mask a day. 7 masks per week. 28 masks per month. That's crazy. Okay? Next. 2019. Ito sa 2019 na, backtrack tayo. Filipinos purchased 1 million items during the first hour of 11/11. Since bawal tayo lumabas sa mall, ang nangyari niyan, umakyat yung numbers ng online shopping. Eh kung sa 2019 pa lang, 1 million items, first hour pa lang, what more pa kaya ng 2020? Ngayon, I tried to get the numbers from Lazada and Shopee here in the Philippines. Ay, naku, i-share sa akin kung gaano kadaming items na nabenta nila during 2020. Ayaw nila. So how are we going to account for that? The painful reality is, which we should accept, is that prioritization of human health over environmental health has led to the delay or reversal of policies aiming to reduce single-use plastic. As a result, demand for recycled plastic material has dropped, the profit margins of recycling have decreased, and the environmental footprint of plastics has increased, which means it became a bigger problem pa for us, for organizations like us to encourage people to clean, dry, sort, and became a bigger problem for us to motivate plastic companies to accept these plastics. So ang good practices na lang ho natin, we have to start from ourselves. Like what Secretary Bernard Romulo Puyat said, the change has to come from you. So galing yan sa atin. So sa procurement po, pag sa hotels, no, at sa resorts, at sa restaurants, we should reduce plastics in packaging. So instead of bottled shampoo, promote natin ang shampoo bars, lotions, and conditioners wrapped in paper. Tanungin natin yung ating packaging specialist to use items with less plastic layers or check authentic compostable alternatives. Sa Nestle po, nung nag-usap po kami, nag-report to sila sa amin, yung mga Tetra Pak nila, yung layers kasi, binawasan ho nila. Okay? Binawasan ho nila. They cannot totally give up plastic packaging, but at least they lessen the plastics in their products. For instance, yung Nesquik na inumin, it used to come with a straw. Ngayon, no more na. So no more straw, no more plastic packaging for the straw, and less plastic layers for the Tetra Pak. And YF, one of our partners, also happily reported to us that instead of using shrink wrap for their deliveries to stack the boxes and secure it, they started using glue instead. So, nabawasan din yung plastic nila. Yan. So, we have to really rethink how to deal with plastics. So, give a plastic-free packaging option for takeout for hotels, restaurants, and resorts. Ask merchants to take their plastic bottles back and drop the plastics with Cleaner Oceans Project. And then also, you can also support movements like this by upcycling the plastics and buying products made out of upcycled plastics instead of virgin plastics. They're about the same price naman and they're also just as strong. So why will you buy virgin plastics when you can buy plastics that were rescued from drowning in the ocean and entering our food chain, di ba? So yan, win-win yan eh. Sa Envi department at sa management naman, co-op method requests that you guys do a personal accounting. Like, you check how many plastic products do you have na ginagamit nyo dun sa inyong establishment. Like for instance, yung laundry department nyo, yung sa detergent, is it packed with plastic or is it in karton? Is it in bar or is it in large jars, di ba? So dapat maging honest din kayo sa sarili ninyo. Transparency in numbers kasi it's a good way to track your consumption. Kasi kung niloloko lang niyo yung sarili niyo, edi false confidence ho yun, di ba? And then, we also encourage management to educate your staff so they understand why everyone needs to drop the plastic. Dapat maintindihan nila eh. Kasi kung hindi nila maintindihan, they will not cooperate. They will not get with the program of lessening plastic pollution. Then have your staff trained about plastic pollution. Develop thorough cleaning procedures that encourage the adoption of reuse models. So instead of using, like say, gloves, no? Imbes na palit tayo ng gloves, imbes na ganun, magugasan tayo ng kamay na mabuti, di ba? Yun. Tapos you also have to coordinate with stakeholders, which are suppliers, waste management service providers, and LGUs to improve effectiveness of actions. Because like I said before, in a few slides back, you cannot do this. We cannot tackle this alone. We have to tackle this along with consumers, businesses, and the LGU and the government. Sa comms, no? Sa comms, very ako sa comms kasi I'm a comms person eh. You have to share materials or collaterals in rooms and public areas about drop to plastic movement, or share what environment-friendly practices you have in your establishment. Yan. So dati, I remember towels would be washed every day and replaced every day. Pero ngayon, di ba, when we enter a hotel room, they actually say, please put the towel on the floor if you want it replaced. If not, please just hang it if you would like to reuse it. This is in accordance to less plastic pollution. Less plastic pollution and conserving water, di ba? Tapos share digital materials or videos that promotes environment-friendly practices in your establishment. Kunwari, meron kayong bins doon na specifically for PET bottles. What are PET bottles? They are the water bottles that usually people give away. Like in the casinos, they go around, they just give it away, di ba? So instead of just throwing it anywhere, there should be bins that are specifically made for those plastic items. So papakita nyo, paano may tutorial kayo. If you have a plastic bottle, if you have enjoyed our water, you can just drop it in any of these bins. Diba? Only plastic bottles, water bottles will enter this bin. Parang ganyan, yun. I'm sure you can think of something. For the consumer and guests, encourage guests to bring their own toiletries. Kung kunwari, pag wala, doon kayo mag-offer ng inyong mga toiletries, di ba? Encourage guests to bring their own refillable beverage bottles. So, meaning, pag may ganyan, sana you have also water dispensers around your establishment. I've seen people do this already. Encourage guests to clean, dry, and drop their plastics in the proper bins. There are also some resorts who are doing this as well. Pagdating sa PPE, encourage guests to bring their own reusable masks, encourage guests to wash their hands or sanitize often instead of using gloves, and encourage guests to use reusable and durable face shields. Kasi may mga face shields yan, madaling masira. So what do? People just throw it in the garbage. Hindi lang yung acrylic pa minsan, pati yung glasses, no? Natapon din nila. Hindi naman kailangan. So encourage guests to use reusable and durable face shields. You can probably sell it there in your establishments if you want, but just as long as you tell them that they have to dispose of it responsibly. Then provide bins also exclusively for PPE items. So I told you there was a challenge for co-op, diba? Kasi nga, for how many months we weren't able to collect from all our partners. So what did I do? Because we cannot stop it. Lalo na now, especially now when there's more plastic consumption because of COVID-19. So what I did, I took the phrase work from home into another level. So I went back home and I went to Ayala Labang Village, Ayala South Village, Alabang Hills Village, the people around our village to join Drop the Plastic. Nestle is still cooperating with us somehow, no? Pero yung ibang mga partners namin, nahihirapan na dahil yung Drop the Plastic ay it's a one-day event. And that's when we discovered that most of the time we get the best results pag one-day event. Hindi yung nakaiwan lang dun sa isang tabi yung bin tapos sinalagay lang plagi din yung plastics. So we went back home and this is what it looks like. So consumers bring their plastics over. Yeah, there's a neighbor of mine. Dala niya yung plastic niya. They weigh it after sorting. Pagdating dun sa Drop the Plastic, nakasort na po yung kanilang plastic. So all they have to do is just bring it to the scale and then our volunteers put it in the proper bin. So from September to November 20, we were able to collect 1.5 tons of plastics. It's a start. So that's what Cleaner Oceans Project does. I hope you learn from us and then I hope you can join the Drop the Plastic movement with Cleaner Oceans Project. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Miss Anna, for that very informative and engaging presentation. So I hope more businesses and people are encouraged to have their plastic waste upcycled. And what faster and better way to start than with Cleaner Oceans project. So I like that you pointed out a while ago that Mother Nature is the best engineer, and that later on you also said that we need to work on this together. And so I like to connect those two things, that we work together as humanity with our government and private sector, and of course our Mother Nature. So before moving forward, we'll just have a 5-minute break. So take this time to use the bathroom, drink water, or get a breather, as we have 3 more speakers ahead of us. I'll signal when our break is done and I'll be asking for a thumbs up from the audience. So actually now it's 3:12 on my watch. So we should be back at 3:17. So enjoy your 5-minute break.
My name is Ayam. I am the Public Relations Manager for Eco Hotels Incorporated. Eco Hotels started in 2015, so roughly 4 years ago. We have sustainable practices and we try to incorporate as much of it into our business models as we can. Since we have solar panels installed in the roof of all of our properties, because of that, our electricity bill is around 20,000 pesos a month, which is kind of unheard of. In the last year alone, we have been able to save 100,000 plastic toothbrushes. So the alternative was bamboo toothbrushes. Now we have refillable containers in the room, fillable soap, shampoo, conditioner, and lotion. So every time there's a new guest that checks in, we just refill with our own homemade amenities. Our farm-to-table practice actually since we started. So if you look around the property, there's a lot of growth, there's a lot of local products here, a lot of foliage, and we have an herb garden at the back. What we like to do is in farm to table is we use them in all of our dishes, seasoning in our welcome drinks as garnish. And because of this, not only are we able to reduce our carbon footprint, not only are we able to sustain our own produce and support our local environment, but we're able to save around 50,000 pesos a month in our groceries or in our purchasing. So when you come in here, we have signs all around the property explaining how this was reused, this was repurposed. Of course, our BYOB is not only done here at the hotel, but guests can also purchase. So we encourage them to bring their own empty shampoo bottles and to refill. It actually sustains the processes because this is a very remote community. It's a very small community. I think sustainable tourism, as long as you have respect for the local community, as long as you try to involve them as much as possible in all of the decisions and in all of the whatever we try to do, if there is involvement and communication, then sustainable tourism is very, very achievable. When you say environmentally friendly, they think it's just recycling. But it's not that. It's living within your means. All our resources are finite and it's running out. So if we still want to coexist here and if we still want to enjoy life as much as we can, we have to make changes. Honestly, if you're not going green, what's stopping you? Make everything better and easier for us, you know. It's one planet.
I'm Sonia Marañon Sarosa. My husband and I, Edgar, own this resort. After that first hotel, the Village Hotel, we expanded and put up the Residence Inn 2 years ago. We made the other extension, the East Wing, which houses now 40 bedrooms. So we have a total of 90 plus bedrooms and 13 function rooms. So it started that we will plant vegetables so we could provide for the kitchen. And people love and they would come here and see our lettuce is fresh because we would harvest early in the morning or late at night and then put it on table. From our lettuce alone, from farm to table, we save about 350,000 for that year. And so the waste, instead of just throwing it, we use it for our vermicomposting. That becomes the soil again for the lettuce. And in terms of greenhouse gas emission, we've saved around 65% compared to conventional procurement. Annually, we've saved around 400,000 pesos from producing our own compost material. Additionally, having produced almost 1,000 bins of food waste in the last year and a half, we've actually earned over 50,000 pesos by selling it. And rather than sending food waste to the landfills, by using it as compost and feed for local hog growers, we've saved the equivalent of 104,000 kilograms of carbon dioxide emissions. So I think that's a contribution to the environment. No? So we hope that all who have visited Nature's Village Resort, in one way or another, you have learned, you have experienced what sustainable tourism practices are, and we hope you will do it in your own whatever way so that we can make our beloved Philippines a better place to live in.
Okay. Can I get a thumbs up from our audience if nakabalik na kayo from our break? Or a chat message, a message for the chat box? But- So yeah, moving forward still, I encourage everyone to please note down your questions. You can direct it to me or to the team, or even if you'd like to remain anonymous, or address it to everyone in the room. Okay, so moving on to our next presentation. So our next speaker joined WWF Philippines as a project manager, leading the country's first ever sustainable consumption and production project with the focus on the food service sector in the country, titled as the Sustainable Diner, a key ingredient for sustainable tourism. Its objective is for the government, private sector, and consumers in the Philippines to have a broad knowledge on sustainable consumption and production in the food related sectors. So, furthermore, she is also leading an innovation project that helps promote food waste diversion away from the landfills, known as Soil Meat, an IT solution on food waste diversion through composting. She has 13 years of diverse work experience with special focus on sustainable consumption and production in food systems, hospitality sector, human and planetary health promotion, among others. She is both a licensed environmental planner and a registered nutritionist dietitian with a master's degree in business administration, major in hotel and restaurant management. She has worked with various organizations ranging from academic institutions, private and healthcare organizations, national government agencies, and now with WWF, an international non-government organization. She'll talk about the sustainable diner in a better and sustainable normal. Miss Melody Mello Wright.
Hi, Kiko. Good day, everyone. So, thank you for the introduction. So, from our two speakers, much has been said already regarding our ongoing battle on plastics. Its effects, both long term and short term, has also been discussed. So, right now, my short presentation will now center on what we do as a project that works on the food service sector. So, for today's menu, we'll start off with the background on WWF as an organization and also on the Sustainable Diner Project. Then we'll also look into the most common plastics that are used in the food service sector. And lastly, we'll end with what are the ways as a project we help our partners and ways we educate our consumers on single-use plastics. So, as a start, WWF is an international organization that is dedicated to environmental protection and conservation. So, we operate in almost all countries around the world, and we were founded in 1961. But for the Philippines, we started as a country office in 1996. So, originally, our name is World Wildlife Fund, but eventually we had to change it to Worldwide Fund for Nature to reflect a greater mandate that we're not just focused on wildlife, but basically all the challenges that our planet is facing today. So we have like mga projects on energy and climate, we have water, we have forest, and now we have even on food. So the project I am part of is actually centered on food. So again, I'm Melody and I'm the project manager of the Sustainable Diner Project and of Soil Meat. So for the Sustainable Diner Project, this project aims to connect the effects of our food choices to our environment. So as mentioned by Kiko a while ago, we are continuously working on integrating sustainability principles into food related national and local policies, food business operations, and the consumer behavior of Filipinos. So when we talk about the sustainable diner, it's about embodying five principles. So first, we advocate for the use of local and seasonal produce. Second, we conserve our energy and water. So we promote conservation of our resources. We also are heavy on promoting food waste reduction. And we also promote eating plant-based dishes and the less meat consumption. And of course, for today's main topic, we will be talking about reduction of single-use plastics in the food service sector. So Basically, the food supply chains often involve large distances and multiple intermediaries, and packaging has been very, very important. Packaging can really assist in the safe transit of our food and thus plays a central role in the food system. This is notably in the case of the single-use plastic packaging that is now very evident in our supermarkets and in our restaurants. So food packaging has been demonstrably linked with high levels of waste, both terrestrial and marine. And there has been a lot of studies already that says that there will be low rates of reuse or recycling in terms of plastic, especially here in our country. However, food and beverage packaging items are amongst the most commonly found marine litter, and examples of these are often used in your takeouts or to goes. So these are your sando bags, straws, coffee stirrers, beverage or cup holders, cutleries, food containers, and also this is a personal experience that whenever you try to order takeouts right now, they put a lot of packaging tape. So those are the most common used plastics. In essence, if you would come to think of it, the use of your single-use plastics are actually its role that it has to play in extending the shelf life of food and consequently reducing food waste. However, the per capita food waste and the packaging waste are really amongst those in the highest globally, and suggesting that packaging is not really offering a silver bullet in the food waste problem that we have. And for that alone, there are some plastics that are still being used in that sector, in the food service sector. So that's not the end of it. So across the food service value chain, there are several plastics that are being generated, especially at the back of the house. Examples of these are plastic containers from your condiments, from your seasonings, from your cooking oil that are made from high density polyethylene. So your HDPE is the most widely used type of plastic waste. To add to that, the pandemic and the protocols on food safety and health preservation has given also rise to more use of disinfectants, cleaning agents, and alcohol. So these containers are also made from your high density polyethylene. So, with this into consideration, in what ways does the sustainable diner come into play? So, although it may seem obvious, an easy way to reduce your single-use plastics is to make them reusable instead of disposable. So, how do we do that? Or most especially in the packaging aspect of food, because this would be the easiest intervention that this sector has to offer, you know. So examples of these include banning of your plastic straws, as mentioned by our two speakers, plastic cutleries, using plastic-free drink coasters or holders, or even using plastic alternatives. These simple initiatives actually can help or can have a large impact on the current problem that we have on plastic waste. However, we must be considerate also that some alternatives of plastic can also use significant amount of resources during production. So if you weigh in, there is not one perfect solution to plastics, but rather we will choose the best option that would reduce all those strains to our environment. Then another intervention that we have for our private partners would be the plastic action. So it's actually a business engagement and voluntary high impact synchronized industry action to adhere to the reduction of plastic leakage by 2025. So this part, I will leave it to my colleague Zarina later on for her to discuss, but some of our partners on the Sustainable Diner project is also part of this pact or our plastic action. Then for our consumer awareness and education campaigns, we are actually heavy on this. So we have released several materials already that would continuously include messaging to prevent the use of your single-use plastics. And examples of these are several listicles that we have created and videos that we co-developed with the No Plastics in Nature initiative of WWF. So we have some examples here. So, and we also have one video that we developed last year together with the No Plastics in Nature initiative. Please watch. So this is just one of the three videos that we have developed last year for single-use plastic reduction. And another very important material that we have developed is actually centered on the youth. So it's actually a teaching manual for primary and secondary teachers, which aims to integrate environmentalism and sustainability in their existing curricula. So the title of our material is the Climate Plate. So, in-depth and spiral approach, this means that the same lessons are constantly being developed from one grade level to the next in increasing complexity and sophistication. So, this method was also used to increase the mastery and retention among school children, and this was done in the same manner for our manual. So if you will see the table of contents on the next slide, you will see there that recurring topics on food on plastic waste will be part of the different levels of primary and secondary teaching. So that's basically our initiatives as far as the project is concerned. So hopefully later on I can answer some questions that you might have. But for now, that's the end of my presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Mel. So for your presentation and for sharing the initiatives of WWF as well as the Sustainable Diner Project. So for any food service representatives in the audience looking to be more sustainable, I recommend getting in touch with Ms. Mel and the Sustainable Diner Project team. So moving forward to our next presenter, who is also from WWF. She currently leads the Worldwide Fund for Nature Philippines No Plastics in Nature initiative, a WWF network approach to stop plastic waste leakage in nature by 2030 through elimination of unnecessary plastics, doubling reuse, recycling, and recovery, and ensuring the remaining plastics is sourced responsibly. She started her career as a corporate training specialist in 2011 before transitioning into environmental conservation work in 2013. So from then on, she has been involved in various projects related to forest protection, biodiversity, biodiversity conservation, solid waste management, and entrepreneurship. She earned her master's degree in environment and natural resources management, major in coastal resources from the University of the Philippines Open University, and her bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of the Philippines, Diliman. She has been recently recognized as an awardee of the Environmental Educators 30 Under 30 class of 2020 by the North American Associate of for Environmental Education. She will talk about the No Plastics in Nature initiative. Ms. Jarina Constantino Panoply.
Hello. Thank you very much, Kiko, for that introduction. So, good afternoon, everyone. Gising pa sana kayo lahat. And I'm very excited to share with you what WWF Philippines is doing in terms of the No Plastics in Nature initiative. Let me just quickly share my screen. So whenever I am asked to share to the different industry players, I always think about what we, and I think it was mentioned a while ago by Mel, the sector roundtable that we did in September 2019. It was an activity wherein we were able to convene, pwede pa po ditong mass gathering 2019. We were able to convene representatives or industry players from the food and beverage industry and also from the hospitality industry. This is very memorable because this was the time that um, we transitioned to the Plastic Action Initiative. And then it was a time that the different industry players discussed the different challenges because we understand that, of course, mas magkakaintindihan kayo kasi kayo yung mas nakaka-experience. And it was a platform that was wherein people were and the industry players were able to share what their challenges, how they are reducing or eliminating the unnecessary plastics in their business operations, and ways forward. It was a memorable day because it was the time wherein the food and beverage industry players who attended, they committed to like work together, collaborate to order a higher volume of plastic alternatives daw so that usually kasi the price of the plastic alternatives are very high, so they would work together in ordering higher volume so that the price would go low. They also talked about consumer awareness, building consumer awareness, and also building internal awareness. As for the hospitality industry, they committed, the different industry players who attended, they committed to phase out single-use plastics in their business operations, and then to adopt refillable hygiene amenities in their properties. And it was a very great sector roundtable. A lot of industry players really committed, a lot of the different brands committed to really do something about the plastic. It was also the day wherein we were able to recognize and transition to plastic action. But before that, we were able to recognize our 20 corporate partners for sustainable journey. So we have been helping them, we have been guiding them, how can they reduce this unnecessary plastics, ano ba yung pwede nilang gawin dun sa necessary plastics nila. And of course, definitely the first one is their commitment to really do something to address the plastic crisis. This data was in September 2019. With this partnership, we were able to stop the leakage of 1.8 million plastic containers, 2.8 million plastic bottles, 1.7 million plastic straws, and 88,000 pairs of plastic cutlery. And we must say that sobrang this is a very great number given that a lot of brands participated in this one, and a lot of corporate partners, a lot of the industry players really work together to really stop the leakage of these single-use plastics. And that is what we really envision, and we really hope that the attendees in this particular forum gets to collaborate together so that we get to um, work on and stop the leakage of plastics into nature by 2030. And then COVID came. So we understand and we acknowledge that it has really impacted the industries that we are working with for the plastic action. But then again, it is also it does not discount us from the fact that there's still a plastic crisis, and we need to discuss it, and we really need the businesses to take part as we address this particular issue on plastic pollution. So we adopted. So what we did is we wanted to show people that sustainability is something that can also be profitable, and sustainability is something that can help um, the different businesses survive in this particular pandemic. So we did this online discussion wherein we presented what are the savings. Ano ba yung savings when you like shift to refillable hygiene amenities? Ano ba yung what are the challenges, or what is the cost comparison for plastic alternatives that are available out there, that are as compared to the plastics that are usually used in some of the establishments. So there are a lot of discussion during this time, and we also release like an alternative material decision tool in the Plastic Action Initiative. It's for free, so you can readily just go online and search for the alternative material decision tool. It will help you decide on which one should we, what are the factors that should be considered if we are to shift into something that is an plastic alternative. So we wanted to guide the different industry players because we see that the value or the impact that we can create if we really work together and collaborate. And so we understand also that hindi lang siya laban ng businesses. There's also other stakeholders that should be engaged for us to stop the flow of plastics entering nature by 2030. There's a need for us, of course, to work with cities. Of course, in terms of waste management and in implementing the RA 9003, it is important for us to have this policy, to update the policy and have this extended producer responsibility wherein we put um, emphasis on how the big businesses or how the obliged businesses or the multinational companies can help us address the can take accountability in terms of the plastic packaging that they release into the market. There's also a factor of consumers, definitely. But I think the blame should not be on these individuals. The blame should not solely be in the businesses, on the cities, and on the policymakers, but there should be accountability for the plastics that we generate. And this is something that we want to push for in terms of the No Plastics in Nature initiative by 2030. We want to eliminate unnecessary plastics. We acknowledge that there are necessary plastics, and I think Mel mentioned a while ago that sometimes plastics is important for food safety. And for us, if it is something that is important to for product integrity, then this is something that is necessary. And then we push for eliminating the unnecessary ones. And let's work on properly managing the necessary plastics. And we need to double reuse, recycling, recovery, and then to ensure that the remaining plastic is sourced responsibly. So there are a lot of things that we can really do together. There are a lot of things that we need to work on together. And it is important that we really work hand in hand, all the stakeholders, and work on the problem in the entire life cycle. So from plastic production, consumption, waste management, until ensuring that there are secondary markets. It is important that we look at the problem as a system, and we need to push for a systemic and comprehensive solution, because this way we get to address and stop the plastics from leaking into nature by 2030. So I really hope that we get to move forward, we get to work together on how can we change, how can we identify, pilot, and implement solutions so that we can address and stop plastic pollution. So with that, if you have any clarifications or questions, please feel free to reach out to us. We are very happy to support you and help you in terms of how can we address this problem. Thank you and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, Ms. Jar, for your presentation and for diving deeper into the initiatives of WWF and the work being done to stop plastic waste leakage in nature by 2030. So let us all do our part in stemming the plastic waste pollution. And as she said, so feel free to communicate and coordinate with their team to know more how we can work together in tackling this problem. So we'll be moving on to our last but not the least speaker. He is both a lawyer and an environmental planner. He is president and CEO of Two Eco Inc., a consulting firm that focuses on sustainable tourism development, preparing policy studies and development plans for national and local governments, communities, and developers. His firm recently completed the climate change manual for the Department of Tourism, the Tourism Development Plan for Zamboanga City, and the Conservation Management Plan of Intramuros. He began a career in tourism policy and planning as the lead drafter of the Tourism Act of 2009 under Senator Richard Gordon. Today, he serves on the boards of the Heritage Conservation Society, Southeast Asian Cultural Heritage Alliance, Philippine Green Building Initiative, and the Clean Our Oceans Project. He finished his master's degree in environmental law, policy, and economics at Yale University, law and political science degrees at the University of the Philippines, and trained in heritage conservation with the Getty Institute. So he will share with us a broader topic, the best practices of responsible tourism, Mr. Mark Evidente.
Okay. Uh, Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Kiko. Thank you for having me over to speak on this topic, and thank you also for that generous introduction. Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone in the group, and my understanding is that most people in the group, if not all of them, are deeply involved in the tourism industry. Now, many are working in hotels, running hotels, or running tour groups, tour agents, travel agencies. Now, a few of you are in the academe or in government. No? So um, I wanted to drive home this afternoon that when we speak about responsible tourism or sustainable tourism, we're not just talking about plastics. We're not just talking about environmental issues, no? But rather we're talking about a spectrum of issues on how tourism affects the environment, the local community in which tourism activities are undertaken. No? So let me just uh, uh, share my presentation. Okay, and let me go to full screen. Okay, so when we talk about responsible tourism, it's really a much bigger concept than managing our waste. No? And I think when I saw the topic responsible tourism, this is one thing I wanted to emphasize because minsan we can always get bogged down in figuring out how we solve one particular problem without seeing that tourism really affects a whole bunch of other issues. No? And so that's something we need to take a broader perspective on and a broader look at. No? So So when we talk about responsible tourism, there are lots of different indicators. Now you can probably look at the Sustainable Development Guide goals of the UN, no? And you can probably identify uh, aspects at which tourism plays a role in each of these development goals. No? But marami yon eh. No? So I wanted to organize how we think about tourism and how it impacts on communities, no? By just focusing on four different aspects, no? But of course, these aspects are very broad also, no? Environmental, economic, social, cultural, no? So if I want to talk about best practices, no, I wanted to reference, I wanted to point out some key examples of what tourism enterprises, what local and national tourism organizations or tourism governments, tourism agencies, no, have to focus on in attaining these goals. No? So we have four overarching goals. Now these four, no, economic, environmental, social, cultural. No? But under each of these, I also have four specific examples in which we can move towards a more responsible and sustainable tourism. So let's think of it as four by four for sustainability. Okay. So first, when we talk about environmental, normally we start off and as we've been discussing all afternoon, no, we're looking at the top right of the screen, no, packaging and food waste. No. We've spent much of the afternoon talking about packaging itself, no? But also food waste generates a lot of greenhouse gas emissions and also generates a lot of impact on the environment. Just imagine that when we farm, no, we are we are still extracting resources from the environment. No? Of course, they're more essential to how we live, di ba? Pero syempre, the moment that we extract these resources at hindi nagamit, di ba, sayang. Pangalawa is that when food waste degrades, it becomes carbon dioxide, it becomes methane, and both of which are the dominant and the powerful greenhouse gas emissions. No? So very important yan. How do we manage food waste? No? Uh, some hotels have been monitoring dynamically, like if they only have so many guests at a particular point, they might cancel buffets, no, or when they prepare buffet dishes, no, they time it lang talaga pag may dumarating na guests, no, so at least yung pagkain hindi lang nakalatag, no? And of course right now, even maybe one upside in this particular moment is that uh, because we don't have we are not encouraged to have a lot of buffet presentations for food now, no, because of the pandemic, no. But then it's yung other side of that equation is that of course lumaki naman yung packaging costs natin, yung packaging impact, no. Second, when we talk about climate change, no, a very big part is transportation emissions, no. People travel across the world to go to particular destinations. No? Of course, right now that traveling has been severely curtailed because of the pandemic. But within 1 or 2 or 3 years that we managed this, we're able to get the pandemic under control. People are expecting to be able to travel again. No? In fact, there's a marketing that there's going to be a lot of revenge tourism, no? Revenge kasi parang bumabawi ka na, for 2 3 years you've not been able to travel, so you'll try to make up for it when international travel resumes, no? So what do we do about this, no? So um, some airlines, for example, or some hotels have encouraged their guests to buy carbon offsets. It's a bit, but essentially the idea is that by buying a carbon offset, you are investing in people planting trees or investing in more renewable technology, So parang uh, but so by buying these offsets, no, you are offsetting your carbon emissions by someone else somewhere else in the ecosystem or somewhere else in the economy, no, doing things to capture those emissions or reduce those emissions, no? But I think more importantly sa industry natin, no, when we encourage people to travel, we have to make sure that their experience is worth traveling for. Diba? So we have to maybe encourage tourists not to move away from just this whole yung umiikot lang para makapag-Instagram and various sites, no? But rather when we encourage people to travel, it has to come up with an authentic experience of a place, of people, no, para yung sense of our own sense of as people, our own sense of humanity is richer, deeper because of that interaction across cultures, diba? So that's how we make those emissions work. That it has to be something productive for humanity as a whole. No? Third one is that we talked about managing impact at sites. No? So Anna and AA had talked about those things now, that once plastics enter into the ecosystem, no, it has this big impact, no, on the wildlife, on chemicals that are released, no, and all those things, no. But we also need to think about the other kinds of environmental impact, no. um, if a trail up a mountain is designed only for 100 people in a day, and then 1,000 people use it, no, what is the impact on the environment, no? It might be that not only is the trail being widened, no, not a trample in vegetation, no, but also the animals in the ecosystem start becoming more conscious about human beings entering a particular environment. So that's one example, no, pag environmental. But there's also cultural impact, no? So here you have, I think this is a picture of Angkor Wat, no, or one of these temples in Southeast Asia, no? That how how do thousands of tourists visiting these sites every day affect the suitability of these temples, or their footsteps, no? How do they affect the stones of these temples, di ba? So syempre kung dumadami yung tao, di ba? Then all the more na erode yung mga temples na to, di ba? So these are things we also have to think about. And then another aspect on the environmental issue is building design and energy efficiency. Now, for us in a tropical country, one of the biggest costs in the accommodation sector, or even the convention sector and event sector, is air conditioning. But a lot of that impact of air conditioning and the electrical consumption because of that, it stems from poorly designed buildings, no? Number one, your building might be facing the afternoon sun. Diba? Number two, a lot of your windows might be facing the afternoon sun. Or you don't have any kind of insulation or any other kind of protection. Like on this one, you have these uh, baffles or these louvers, no, that help shield the window from direct glare of the sun. No? So syempre, pag pumapasok yung init sa isang gusali, then all the more that the aircon has to work harder. No? But even further than that, no, you can design a building in a way that you will have very little need for air conditioning. So in our, like, you take advantage of passive cooling, so you take advantage of natural ventilation. So you orient your building to capture the amihan and habagat winds in our country, no? Or you let ventilation, that yung hot air na nakakapag-escape sa isang area, no? So all these things, no? So it's not simply about energy consumption. It's actually the last phase of trying to reduce our environmental impact, no? But really how our buildings are currently designed, or if they're already existing buildings, how they can be better suited to meet the environmental challenges of our climate, no? It can be as simple as, and this is like a double benefit, no? That if your building is facing the sunny side, the afternoon sun, no? Then you plant more trees in front, diba? And then so that helps provide shade, that provides, no? And of course, there's an added carbon capture value when you plant trees, diba? Okay. And remember, we spent a lot this afternoon talking about one segment here, but here I've highlighted four particular issues, which are massive issues in tourism and how they impact on the environment. Okay. So next, let's talk about economic. Okay. Um, One of the major we talk a lot about how the tourism industry generates so much economic activity, no? So in the Philippines, it was worth 12.7% of our GDP, if I remember correctly, last year, no? And then globally, it's around 10 to 11% of global GDP, no? So it generates a lot of money, diba? But the question is, does that money really help benefit communities that are affected by tourism? No? Every big investor who like comes into a, let's say, a beachfront location, a beach island, no, will make the pitch that, oh, I want to bring my investment to your community, to your island, no, because it will generate jobs, it will generate investment, asenso yung community mo, di ba? But really, how do we really make that a reality? No? Let's start from the top right. Employ local staff. No? Kasi one of the major flows of money from a business to the community is through staff that actually are from the community or live in the community, di ba? Sweldohan mo yung tao, tapos paglabas ng tao, he spends that money in the community. So umiikot yung pera, umaasenso yung community, no? The small businesses in that community are supported by that kind of income that tourism employees and tourism businesses bring. No? But there are, of course, establishments that instead of employing locally, they bring a lot of their employees from the urban areas, no, let's say from Manila or Cebu, and then bring them to a remote location. No? And more often than not, they are inside a housing, a bunkhouse, no, for that resort, and then every few weeks or every few months, then they go on leave and then go on vacation and then go back to Manila or Cebu and they spend their money so in Cebu or Manila. No? So yung pera ng empleyado hindi umiikot sa local economy. No? So it's important that we employ locally. No? So money is able to circulate in the local economy. No? So that yung poverty and so that the poverty in the local community can be addressed. No? After all, tourism tends to really reach out into these communities that have very little economic activity, except the fact that they have a beautiful beach, they have a beautiful mountain, wonderful forest, no, or great heritage sites, no, historical sites. No. So, uh, uh, to help address that issue, no, it's important to employ locally. No. Okay. Second, no, supporting or growing local food. Again, this is part of making the tourist money circulate in local economies. No? So if you are living in an agricultural area, or if your business is in an agricultural area, buy the local food. No? At least that way you're able to support the local farmer. You're able to support the local people in the market. No? And of course, there is also an environmental benefit to that. No, you're not importing fruits from halfway across the world. No, with an environmental impact, a fuel and emissions impact. No, instead you're buying stuff locally and then supporting the local community, or as shown in some of the videos that our hosts has shared. No, that many establishments can in fact grow some of their own vegetables, some of their own food requirements, and that can also help, no, it lowering costs and then sharing these environmental benefits to tourists. No. Third, payment of local taxes and fees. No. Again, if we say that we're bringing in investment or bringing in economic activity to a community, one of the biggest tools for that is really the payment of local taxes and fees to the local government unit. No? And because then the local government unit ideally will start reinvesting that, no, in better public services, no? Better schools for the local community, better healthcare, no? Better public works, no? Maybe even a better road that will help make your tourist destination more accessible. No? So it starts a virtuous cycle, no? So a cycle in which by giving an investment in a particular area, paying your local taxes and fees, then it also generates more investment, more arrivals, more growth for the local economy. You know? And it starts from paying, the right local tax and fees. And then last on this slide of economics, no, promote local businesses to guests. Diba? There are, I know, for example, that there are tour operators here or like who bring in foreigners, and then oftentimes yung tour guide pa nga nila foreigner din, no, and then yung pupuntan lang yung mga establishments that are all owned by particular nationalities, no. And so again, the benefits, that alleged benefit of economic impact of the tourism industry, no, doesn't really get to the community, no? Because it goes uh, to foreigners, no, who have invested locally, yes, but ultimately a portion of that gets sent back out. No? So it bottom line is that really when we think about using tourism for economic development, and we encourage people in the private sector to think about it this way, is that we are bringing economic activity to places that often have very little else. Diba? So we need to find ways in which we are able to help bring that tourism money to help address poverty, to help address the shortage of public facilities, no, into all these locations around our country. So economic. And that ties in with the next one of social. No? Okay. So let me start off at the bottom left, no, invest in local training. One of the questions that comes up is that how can we hire locally if we are in a remote town, no, na that most of the people there do not have not gotten the kind of training that's needed to help this industry, no? Okay, but then that's why you help, umpisa pa lang, invest in local training, no? So I'm working with a particular client, for example, that even though they're still projecting that it will take them maybe a year or two to start building their tourism estate, no, their tourism investment in that particular area, no, they're already working locally, no, to train carpenters, to train masons, no, and then in a few months they'll already start training also people to learn to do housekeeping, no, basic bookkeeping, entrepreneurial skills, no, because alam nila na in order for the community to benefit, you need to have these people with the local skills. Because otherwise, it's also a cost problem for them, no? That if they need trained construction workers, saan nila kukunin? They'll have to bring it from some other part of the country and then settle doon. And then, of course, then you create another population boom in that area by bringing in migrants. Diba? But instead, if you start off by ahead of time, you train the locals, no, with all the necessary skills, and by the time that you enter with your investment, no, then you already have an investment in people that will now help you with your investment in the business. Okay. And then next, let's move to the upper right. No, be involved in community decisions. No? um, Very crucial yan that um, actually a lot of LGUs, no, they have been forming tourism councils. No? And tourism councils, no, are often a multi-sectoral body. No, from it includes members from government, it includes members from the business side, also includes members from civil society. No, but in order for the concerns of the tourism industry to be understood by the community, there has to be a place, of course, for the conversation. No? Similarly, no, for the industry to understand the community that it's in, they have to be in a particular place again, also for that consultation. No? So you have to be involved in the city council. You have to be involved in local decisions. No, even just having an informal conversation regularly with the mayor or the governor or the local council, no, yung sanggunian, no, it's important para at least uh, the local community does not see tourism investors as outsiders, no, but see them as a critical part of the community, no? And also vice versa, that the investor or the no also develop good working relationships with the local community. And of course, that all starts with being there, no, and having that conversation. Okay. Next on the top left, now, when you talk about promoting public health, of course, this is in the context of the pandemic. But generally, when we talk about social, public health is also a part of that, together with education and you know, um, uh, uh, okay, Uh, but that's why actually we call it social distancing, di ba? Because what's an important step here in controlling the pandemic is that we actually have all these social tools, di ba? That like how we manage our interaction with each other para yung transmission from one person to another is reduced. So, of course, the DOT already has all sorts of guidelines and all this now. So, um, it's also important for all stakeholders in the industry to realize that unless we solve the problem of public health, hindi marirevitalize yung tourism industry natin. Diba? Uh, we are all reliant on the idea that maybe in a year or two or three we will all get the vaccine. No? But in the meantime, within that next year, two or three, no, paano yung mga negosyo, paano yung mga empleyado na yung buhay nila nakasalalay sa turismo? So that's why the our government has been trying to open up the tourism industry because we need the economy to start moving again. But it's crucially important that as the economy starts up again, we all have to be vigilant. We all have to do our part, our social obligation in doing our part in managing the pandemic. Okay. And then last on social, no, inclusive to gender, age, nationality, and people with disabilities. No? So let's start with people with disabilities. No? A lot of hotels, for example, no, wala pang proper disability access. No? And that's just one kind, no, yung wheelchair access. No? How about the way we use our signs? The way we mark our destinations, our sites, are they in a way that they are readily visible to people who are even visually impaired? No? Ako, I wear glasses now. I have a grade of around 325. No? So minsan, of course, I take off my glasses. But it would be good to see signs that even when I have some visual impairment, no, nababasa ko pa rin na kahit malabo, kita ko pa rin, di ba? Okay. Or, um, when you talk about PWD, no, there's signs, no. So, are there signs that you are putting for people who are not of average height? Diba? So, you can think of children, no. Do they see these signs? Do they see these points of accessibility, no, like door handles or elevator buttons, mga ganon, no? Or ramp railings, diba? Are they accessible to people who are shorter than most? No? Okay. Whether you're talking about children or talking about people in wheelchairs, no? No? So at least like in toilets, diba? There's now that more and more people are now putting these toilets na naabot ng bata. No? Okay. Same thing about age. No, how do we deal with people who are aged? No, there's an aspect which is a disability issue. No, there's also an aspect which is an employment issue. No, that do we allow employees to continue working? No, and, even though that they are officially retirable and all that, but if they want to continue contributing to your business or to a community, is there a way for them to continue to do that? No? Okay. Nationality. How are we trained to deal with people of different cultures, of different nations? No? Do we do it in a respectful manner? No? Minsan tayong Pilipino, no, that we might be very, what you call this, welcoming with guests and all that, no. But yet, at the back, we often, snap and say things about different people or different nationalities or different cultures. No? Yeah. Okay. And then finally, gender, very important. No? Because the tourism industry is an industry that has very sizable portion. In fact, majority, of people in the tourism industry are women, right? And then a very sizable portion of our industry also are people who belong to the LGBTQ community. How do decision makers respect and honor those differences in gender orientation? Uh, for example, in many hotels, no, yung senior managers are male, no? How do they manage their, the power dynamic they have with their female employees, diba? So things like that, no. These are, there are gender issues, there are age issues, nationality, disability issues, or differently abled issues. The real question is that, um, there are peculiarities in the tourism industry, no, that considering how we are supposed to receive people who may be different from us, no, and that we are responsible for a very large portion of employment in this country, no. How do we make it a better place for both our own employees and our own visitors, no? Okay. And then our last of the 4 points, no, culture. Okay. Let's start with the easy ones, no. One is, yan, honor local food and traditions. Um, what do you call this now? So in my work in doing tourism development planning, I get to travel around the country, meet with different LGUs now. Um, but it's often sad that that many LGUs don't even have a sense of what their local cuisine might be. And that's very important for tourism kasi that's one major way of inviting tourists over, diba? That there's a particular cuisine. Like if you talk about Japan, we know about Japan, we know of Japan, we have a connection to Japan simply because we know their cuisine. We have an understanding about these things. Or Italy, for example. Ganon. Okay. Um, so if we want to talk about tourism, and a tourism that is rooted and sustainable in the locality, we have to figure out what are the local food and other local traditions. No? Okay. Okay, it goes back to the first slide about local food production. Uh, Local food products are often a result of local food is a product of what the local agriculture is. Okay, so figure that out. No? Or in fact, there might be local agriculture, pero hindi pa pala natatranslate into a local food product. Diba? So maybe that's where we can, we in the industry can come in, provide innovation, provide new ideas para a particular destination acquires more identity as a particular place because now there is a food product that you can share, you can export all over the world, and then people start identifying with a particular place. Next, also the level of ease, no? Honor traditional design and products. No? So dito sa Pilipinas, no, we have a lot of traditional ethnic designs. No? So in many cases, no, we might be able to incorporate this, especially in locations in which there is an indigenous community or even the broader ethno-linguistic community. No? Um, are there local designs, local products, local foods that can be reflected in a particular place? No? So, for example, no, if you go to Pampanga, there's awareness of what the local food is, right? That's an important part of the branding. Or if you go to the Cordilleras, diba? We have many indigenous communities there, no? And many have their own patterns and their own traditions, no, regarding, okay. And so, in those particular places, when you have hotels or establishments, how can you channel these different aspects of traditional design, knowledge, practices, traditions? Okay. Is it something that you can reflect in your restaurant's menu? Is it something that you can reflect in the design of your particular hotel or other establishment? Okay. But crucially also, no, those two things, especially pagdating sa mga kapatid natin sa indigenous communities, no, you have to talk to the local cultural leaders. Why? Because some of these things might have deeper meaning to them. Uh, we might be talking about, let's say, a particular symbol or pattern that they find in their traditional weaves, our traditional fabrics. No? Um, and it might have importance to them. It might have symbolism to them. No? And so it might not be appropriate that you start using it in a way that is not respectful or with the permission of that particular community. This is the whole this whole debate now that we call cultural appropriation. It's really all about using these symbols, these aspects of culture and tradition in a way that is respectful and in keeping with the original intent of a particular community. And to highlight why that's important, let's talk about the last aspect, no? Honor local sites and their significance. No? It's worth remembering that for many cultural communities, no, um, some of these things are as important to them and their identity as any religion is to anyone else. Diba? So if we're talking about your traditional design, no, if you have to treat it with the same respect, no, unless you have the permission to do so, to use it otherwise, no, that if you're a Christian and you associate the cross, diba, you have to accord the kind of traditional presumption that a particular symbol is that important to a particular community. So it's about mutual respect. If you want other people to reflect the symbols of your identity, diba? So we as Filipinos, our flag, no? We of particular religious beliefs, our religious symbols like our crucifix or our Bible, our Quran, diba? Uh, no? So same thing, no? Do not we accord the people of different cultures the same status as our own religion and identity. Okay. And so same thing when we talk about local sites and their significance. No? Um, if we're talking about, let's say, a traditional grave site or a traditional place of worship, we have to give it also the same kind of reverence as if it was the the a place of our own religious practice, or a place where we also keep our own dead. Diba? So like that, no. It came to me, that how important this was, no. In speaking at one time years ago with a Native American leader, no, why he felt so strongly that a particular landscape in the United States should be protected in a particular way. No, and then he said, uh, "Mark, you are a Catholic, right?" I said yes. Okay. So would you imagine if how would you feel if big business, if developers came in and then built on top of St. Peter's without asking the permission of your religious leaders? Then it hit me na, oh nga no, ganun ka-importante dapat yan. Ganun if we strive for mutual respect, mutual acceptance, mutual tolerance, diba? We have to accord people who may be different from us, no, the same kind of respect. So ultimately, when we talk about responsible tourism, uh, looking at our environmental impact is one major step to understanding really our broader impact on communities and the globe. Okay. So it might start simply from managing our waste at a particular in our particular facilities, no? But it also goes and then we realize that our impact doing that has an impact on the coral reefs, on the broader ecosystem, no? And then that ecosystem in turn is very important for the fisherman who will in turn get the fish that you will then serve to your guest, no? And then that fish now has microplastics, but umiikot, diba? So uh, part of that, it's really all realizing that tourism is great as an industry because it's a way of linking so many people across cultures, across different environments together. Uh, And so that's why to be responsible about it, we do have to be mindful about our impact on the environmental, economic, social, and cultural dimensions of tourism. And with that, thank you very much.
Hey, thank you very much, Sir Mark, for your presentation. Yeah, thank you for sharing your experience, knowledge, and the practices you mentioned, as it surely encourages not only me, but also our audience to be responsible tourism advocates, keeping at heart and mind the four pillars that you revolved your presentation around: economic, environmental, social, and cultural. So, ends, and that ends the presentation segment and should put us all under the umbrella of responsible tourism, highlighting, of course, the main topic for today, the plastic problem. So we will now have our open forum. And to facilitate this open forum, we have the President and Executive Director of the Philippine Center for Environmental Protection and Sustainable Development, Inc., or PSEPSD. PSEPSD is the administrator of the National Eco-Labeling Program, a voluntary third-party and quasi-government program which awards the ISO 14024 Type 1 environmental labeling, called the Green Choice Philippines Seal of Approval to eco-friendly products and services. So he graduated with a Bachelor of Science in Forestry from the University of the Philippines at Los Baños with a distinguished UPLB Gold Medal Leadership Award in 1996. A licensed forester and an environmentalist, he is the country's representative to the Global Eco-Labeling Network, or GEN, an international organization of countries engaged in eco-labeling programs. In addition, he sits in the technical committee on the phasing out of non-environmentally acceptable products, or NEAP, of the National Solid Waste Management Commission. So he has also conducted numerous trainings, workshops, and discussions on eco-labeling, sustainable production and consumption, biodiversity, natural resource management and conservation, urban forestry and landscaping, waste management, and environmental awareness to government employees and business groups. So everyone, my boss, Forester June Alvarez.
Uh, Thank you, Kiko. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I think I'd like to express my gratitude to our distinguished speakers, kay Dr. AA, kay Miss Anna, Miss Melody, Miss Sharina, and Attorney Mark. And of course, to our beloved Honorable Secretary for gracing for providing us an inspirational and welcoming remarks this morning. So as we move on to our opening forum, allow me also to summarize a bit of the different topics that we have covered today. In the early morning, we discussed about uh, the marine pollution based marine biodiversity, the threat of single-use plastics to Philippine marine biodiversity, and tackling plastic pollution in the hospitality sector, where we our two distinguished speakers discuss about the importance of marine ecosystem, the biodiversity and its ecosystem services, zeroing on the marine pollution that we have, and focusing on marine litters, plastics, and its impact to the food web, to the environment, to the marine environment. And also Miss Anna discussed about the ideal situation of underwater, which she shown a beautiful video about the oceans that we have, as we know that we belong to the marine mega biodiversity in the world. And in the same manner that they discuss about the state of the marine litters that we have, its impact, including the effect of climate change to the ocean, the underground ocean, and the actions that should be taken, including the laws that we have already, that we just need to put some, mechanism on it. And uh, in the same manner that the co-op has a proposed action, the popular refuse, reuse, rethink, recycle through consumer, business, manufacturers, and government. while they also discuss about the, to a certain extent, the plastic pandemic, where they came up with some good practices or recommendation, like on procurement, environmental management, communication, PPEs, and so on and so forth. So in the same manner that the WWF, through Miss Melody and Sharina, discuss about their initiative on abating marine litters through their specific projects, like on Sustainable Diner, where they look at the value chain of single-use plastics in the food and restaurant industry, and they came up with some recommendation on how to minimize the impact of these marine litters to the food sector. And then they have some strategies like communication, in particular that they have this campaign on phasing out single-use plastics by 2030, focusing on the participation of the industry, and they discuss about on how the response of the different industries by coming up with their own commitment and initiative. And WWF also came up with an alternative material decision tools, which can be used by any one of us, or particularly the industry, on to participate in the campaign. And looking at the broad strategy of WWF, they have a campaign on working with cities, working with government policies, and then on in particular working with different businesses, and of course to the up to the level of consumer. Uh, Likewise, Attorney Mark also discussed in a broad sense the what should be the responsible tourism should be, and looking at the different facets of sustainable development, like environment, economics, social, and cultural. So that's the um, cool topics that have been discussed in under the responsible tourism through plastic upcycling and waste management. With that, I'd like the this forum to be open for question and answer. So, any question from the audience?
Hi, Sir Jun. So yeah, to facilitate the open forum, we've noted down a few questions that were sent
Okay.
during the pre-registration and during this the time we've had. So yeah, we can start off with the first, which is shown on the screen.
Okay. So, we are already converting our food waste into compost. Where can we donate this? Also for shredded gaming playing cards. So anyone from our speakers who have probably some programs. In the first place, where is this establishment, if I may ask? Because I think it's specific, location is specific.
City of Dreams, Manila.
City of Dreams, Manila. Okay, and
Apo.
how big is the generation of the compost?
Na, I think it's 700 kilograms.
On a daily basis, 700 kilograms on a daily basis.
1 to 2 days.
Oh, 1 to 2 days. Okay, so anyone from our speakers?
Hi, Sir June. Mel here.
Hi, Miss Mel. Yeah, go ahead,
Yes.
please.
Yes, actually, we had initial conversations already with City of Dreams through our chat. So we have this project called Soil Meat. So it's actually a waste diversion system wherein we try to compose your food waste at the same time collect it from your establishment. So
Okay.
we actually launched it last December 3.
Mm-hmm.
But for this case, we can do individual presentations to those who are interested in Soilmate. So I've already reached out to Miss Rapunzel. Is it
Okay,
Miss
great,
Rapunzel?
great.
Yes. So we will be doing our presentation of Soilmate to them directly.
Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Okay. So, Kiko, next, please.
For the playing cards pala, we could also accept it sa co-op because that's plastic coated. It's the same like Tetra Pak. So it's a PLA.
Yeah,
Polylactic
laminated,
acid.
ano?
Di ba? Oo. So
Mm.
pwede namin gamitin yun.
Okay, good,
Oo,
good.
pwede padala sa amin.
Okay. So, okay, Kiko, next, please.
Yes.
The problem is the source, like when we buy products from the supermarket, plastic is everywhere. The government must implement the rules about choosing plastic. How do we get the government to do this?
I have a suggestion for that kasi it's always asked of me being I was working with the association before as PR and CSR. So the government will implement rules about using plastics only, kasi politics yan only when they see that citizens are signing up for the movement. Once you start getting active, makita nilang popular yon, papasok si government at sasabihin, gawin natin project yan, tapos boto niyo ako sa susunod. Ganyan.
So
So
very political, ano?
Oh, it gets political. But then, it works that way because you can't blame them. They have a certain amount of budget that they have to make sure that it's worth it, di ba? Yung sa pagbigay ng suporta. So
Okay.
ngayon, bago magbibigay ng suporta, titingnan muna nila kung maraming makikinabang at maraming gagamit. So that's how co-op was able to get barangay Ayala Alabang, Barangay Alabang sa Alabang Hills, tapos ngayon sa Las Piñas we're gonna start na rin. Tsaka
Okay.
Muntinlupa meron na rin kami. Yun,
So,
that's how we got them to
Miss Hannah, if I may ask further, this project is about phasing out plastics or what? Or managing the plastics that they have?
Both. It was for both. Oo. Sa, parang we ask kasi na matanggal na yung mga sandbag.
Yes, yes.
Pero ang hirap talaga. Oh my God, ang hirap.
Quezon City actually phased it out already, the sandbag.
Muntinlupa also phased it out. But at the same time, while we were doing that, we also asked our technological partner Sentinel to find ways to use the sandbags. So we already have. Meron na. Kakalabas lang, kakatuwa. So we are able to use the sandbag and make it into a bin.
Okay, so upcycling, recycling ito and upcycling. Okay, that's great.
Urge people to use it, but at least merong end product na hindi pumupunta sa landfill. No.
So yeah, the key here is in the supermarket, we know for the fact that some LGUs are still not regulating the sandbags, but for others, there are a lot of LGUs already are implementing the phasing out of the sandbags, and it creates a lot of awareness among the consumer because they are required to bring their own bags when they do shops in the supermarket. But for others, looking at the statistic that you have presented, we still need to, significantly do the campaign when it comes to the reduction of the sandbag. And the government through, I guess, the policy is there, the Republic Act 9003 is there. It just need probably to somehow look at the implementing rules and regulation and perhaps, refocusing on maybe on the plastic, something like that. So, and I think that's WWF also is trying to work it out. Okay. So, okay, Kiko, please, next. Do we have, how many questions do we have?
I believe there are three more questions.
Three more questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe I'd like to add to what Anna said. Yeah, if that's okay.
Yeah, please.
Regarding government, I think kasi the tendency of thinking about government is that government will just stop it, diba? Utos lang ng government, tapos it should end already, no? But government does a lot of other things, no? When we say that government leads, it's a very communication oriented or educational oriented function, diba? I think a lot of people don't do segregation, no? Because they have no no trust in the system that if you sort your things, these things will actually get processed properly somewhere, ba? Kasi nakikita
Mhm,
ba
mhm,
natin like the ordinary citizen, do they know of and do they have confidence that if they sort their plastics, 'di ba, it will get properly processed, 'di ba? Because that's why co-op is seems like it's such a new innovation or drive, because it seems like this is the only organized way to systematically deal with plastics, when in fact it should be done by all LGUs, diba? So that, and that's just plastics. Now we're also supposed to be doing the same thing for aluminum, for other metals, for glass, diba? And then our
yeah.
Food.
electronic
Mm,
waste,
Food
diba?
din.
Lahat yan dapat ginagawa, no? But
mhm,
yet, these, so yung nangyayari lang is that the only solution at the moment is a landfill. Na sinasabi pa na sanitary landfill. I don't know what that,
mhm,
what does that mean in real life? That sanitary landfill lang because because everyone else is clean and then the landfill gets filled with our trash, diba? Um, but if we talk about our solid waste management program, diba, government should not just be doing all these different things, but should be developing trust in the citizenry that this process will work, should work, diba? And I think one major thing that they should be doing, no, is that it even starts in school, because I'm sure that for many of us, no, our own sense on how we throw our waste properly and all that, nag-umpisa yan sa school eh, di ba? Or nag-umpisa yan sa magulang na sinabihan tayo na don't litter, keep it in your pocket, and then pag makita mo yung trash can, doon may tapon, di ba? It starts at the most basic thing, di ba? And so imagine if LGUs, no, brought their field trips. Of course, at the moment, bawal a field trip, no, but once it's to actual recycling sites. So you can actually see how products are being how waste is being managed. No? That ito sinusort, you know. And then on the other end, diba, we also bring our students anyway to manufacturing sites. Diba? We bring them to factories para ma-inspire yung mga estudyante na maging, oh, I'll be an engineer, I'll be a scientist. Diba? So maybe we have to focus on both ends of the ecosystem, no, of the product life cycle. No? That if we teach our children that they should go to factories, and then so they'll be inspired to do the kind of engineering and science that we need to do. At the other end of the scale, also, diba? We should also show our children that yes, our waste has an impact, but look, we're managing it. No? So imagine what your role is. All you have to do is to put it in the right bin or to put it in the right trash bag. But wala yung confidence that the system works. Diba? Because we don't see these different efforts to deal with metals, plastics, glass, no, in a systematic way. Because as far as many people think and see, no, oh, it just gets put in one trash bag and then thrown on top of the collection service, diba? And so then it disappears, and my responsibility disappears. Diba? So we need to develop, and government has a very major role in developing that confidence that the system exists and that we have a part to play in that system.
okay. Okay. So thank you very much, Attorney Mark. I think to add on more, because this is a problem of where the consumption side is the supermarket. I think one thing that we can also explore is the market-based approach of managing the waste. The government has a lot of things to do. They have so much in their plates, and at this point in time with this pandemic and all that stuff, they cannot really chew all the things that they have bite already. So on the other hand, we're not saying that they shouldn't do their job, to implement a law, but I think there are things that privately, the private sector, the consumer, and the private sector, particularly the businesses, can work on this on a market-based approach by putting value on the plastics and making it more tradable, something like that. Put value on it. Unlike other recycled materials, like the iron, the aluminum, you cannot see it anymore, or maybe you can see it, but not as much as the way we see the plastics in the market, because it has a value. So I think we should also think a way to put value on this packaging, and to discourage the use of it to a certain extent, and maybe to manage it. So something like that. Okay. So is there any other rejoinder or related question on this topic?
Okay. Tama si Mark kasi na there is no trust. Ang palaging sinasabi sa akin ng mga tao is that when ma'am, Miss Ana, paano ba naman yun? Kami, nagre-recycle kami. Inaayos namin mabuti para segregated yung plastics. Pero pag kinolect ng mga collectors, nilalagay rin naman kasama ng food waste. So, bakit pa? So, that's one. So, there's really no trust. So, pag sa co-op dinadala, at least sigurado sila na upcycle, hindi na pupunta sa landfill.
Okay.
Tapos, secondly, he is also right that we started with schools. So, we also have some schools na who's also cooperating with us, but it's all the way in the province, no? Ayan, so, and then, the government din kasi use it also as a political tool na, sige, basta itapon namin yung mga basura nyo dyan, bahala kami mag-collect. Ganun nangyari. Kasi dati naman, wala naman, di ba? I mean, you took care of our own garbage, correct? Tapos pati food waste, ginagawang baboy, kain ng baboy, yung ganyan. Di ba? Pero nangyari, naging political siya.
Yeah.
So, we're in this phase now because also then of COVID-19 that we have become ironically, our plastic consumption has increased like 300%, yet we are all more environmentally conscious. So I see more people actually who are more willing to join environmental movements. So nakakatuwa rin, but we have to just keep going on even though it's quarantine.
Yeah, Tomas, with this Lazada and Shopee thing, lahat packaging. Anyway. Yeah. So, okay. So, we'll leave this topic and we proceed to the next question. Kiko? Okay. So, related to this, since Co-op is working with upcyclers, do you have certain guidelines of knowing a good upcycled material, ensuring it will not go back to the ecosystem? Some sector may upcycle materials such as artworks or land and may end up back into the marine or landfills. Meaning, we just extend the life of the plastics by upcycling it. So the question is there? It has something to do with the circular economy, ensuring it will not go back to the ecosystem, something like that. So Miss Ana, take it away.
Pag sa upcycling material, syempre, pinaka-best is like the hard and flexible plastics. Kunwari katulad ng HDPE at saka ng polypropylene. Those two are the favorites of upcyclers because they can make really good, durable products with it. However, like I told you a while ago, we're able to make something out of labo bags na rin. So, kahit anong plastics na lang pwedeng gamitin for upcycling as long as hindi PVC at saka as long as clean and dry siya at saka sorted. Kasi ang nangyayari sa atin, tapon lang tayo. Pangit actually, di ba, nung naturo sa atin na gagamit tayo ng gamit na plastic tapos tinatapon lang natin, di ba? Sa Japan, hindi na ganun eh. Where I went, I was in Kamikatsu in the zero waste community. They all clean and dry and sort their plastics. So very disciplined. Ang Pinoy, we have a long way to go. But at least now there are more people who are signing up for this co-op method where they clean, dry, and sort. So plastics are okay. They are be able to be kept in the use of man away from the landfill, away from the ocean, as long as you make sure you don't use PVC. Yun. Yun. Pag iron, mga paper, na-oxidize eh. So, minsan okay lang. Matagal, ang iron Pero at least nag-oxidize. Ang paper madali, di ba? Nga lang. Tapos, pero yung mga PPE, kunwari, yan ang problem natin ngayon. PPE.
Okay.
Kasi, yeah.
More of health concern. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's gonna come up in another question. I'm pretty sure.
Okay. Okay.
So I hope I answered your question.
Okay. So yes, Kiko, next please.
For this will be our last question for everyone's reference, and yes, on point, Miss Anna, about PPE. And for this question, sir, yeah, I hope we can also get the insights and opinion of Doc AA and Miss Jar.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, please.
So,
Okay. Yeah. PPE waste consists of paper, plastics, and rubber-like materials and are usually disposed on one trash bin. Is this okay? I mean, there is no segregation of PPE waste. If we were to segregate PPE waste, there will be a need for a lot of bins, especially inside the rooms. There are also concerns from the room cleaners because this type of waste are toxic and highly contaminated. Any advice will be appreciated. So Doc AA, if you could kindly, give us your view on this.
Well, wala akong management recommendations on how to deal with it. I'll give that to Anna. Pero for me, just a general opinion, like awareness for me is such a big thing. Remember the time when there was a viral video showing someone pulling out a plastic straw from the nostrils of a marine turtle, of a pawikan? That actually started a movement for the reduced use of plastic straws, di ba? But ang pumalit naman doon yung metal straws, which are from mine, like from ore. So as a general statement lang, we have a lot of solutions for different things, and I think we need to use communication, our school system, educating the children, our laws, and all of these to have a significant impact on how to deal with it. Pero for this question, I'll give it to Anna.
Okay.
I guess it falls under one of the categories for the plastics.
Okay. So Miss Anna.
I'm back. So PPE waste, yeah. It consists of papers, plastic, and rubber-like materials. That paper there is not really even paper, it's plastic. You know, the one there in the mask, that's polyethylene. Yeah. At saka PP yan, polypropylene. Nag-mixture sila, composite. So ngayon, ang nangyayari dyan, LGU is supposed to have the responsibility of providing the means to manage this properly, not bring it to the landfill. Kasi parang useless dadali mo sa landfill, di ba? Tapos nandun siya, baka makaspread pa ng virus, no? I know many people are against this, but parang this is the only way. But to place it in a gasifier, or bring it to the cement factories and then have them use it for ash, ganon, they'll still burn it. Pero wala tayong choice Kaya nga, my suggestion all the time is do reusable, wash your hands more often. Reusable gloves also, ganon. Tapos, if they were to segregate PPE waste, there'd be actually, pag segregate yung PPE waste, there's not much bins na i-add sa inside the rooms. It's going to be supposed to be a yellow plastic bag. A yellow plastic bag signifies to the garbage collector that it is medical waste. And medical waste is handled differently. However, again, alam mo naman, June, hindi naman natin alam kung saan pupunta yung waste na yun, di ba? So, pero just to say, make an effort siguro because once they see that people are doing the yellow plastic bags, then it will go on the government's faces and say na, oh, we really need to do something about these PPEs.
Yeah.
Yun. Yeah. Tapos for the room cleaners, this type of waste are toxic and highly contaminated. Yun na nga, yellow plastic bag talaga.
Yes.
Kailangan nakaseal ng maayos. And they have to wear PPE themselves, diba? Which they already do anyway.
Okay. Anyway, so that complements the recommendation of Dr. AA. Awareness is very important.
Yes.
And I think in the first place, the campaign before was we shouldn't use PPEs for ordinary people because this should be controlled and should be disposed of. It should be a medical, type of thing that should be controlled in terms of disposal kasi nga contaminated waste siya. So the campaign is to use recyclable one. On the other hand, some establishments, especially even the hospital, also somehow when you enter in the hospital requires you to wear these PPEs. Ano, kung meron kang suot na recyclable, ayaw nila yon. So may mga ganong concerns, but there should be a proper or a kind of mechanism in terms of disposal on this. And that's, you mentioned about the contaminated waste, which is medical waste, and I think it's being controlled by the government. Ang problema lang talaga, ginagamit din ng mga ordinary tao, and you can see it elsewhere in the environment. So nakakalat talaga siya, nakakatakot din. So I think that's one recommendation, awareness, and maybe we should get also the opinion of Ms. Sharina. Any
Yes.
recommendation?
Thank you. So, I agree po, I support po yung sinabi ni Anna tsaka ni Miss Anna tsaka ni Sir AA kanina regarding the PPE, yung sagot nila regarding this. I think it's important as well na before we try to push for like managing the waste, let's first think of how can we reduce the waste.
Reduce.
And I think you mentioned it you mentioned it na po na if there's an opportunity for us to go to reusables, and sinasabi nga ng mga different NGOs ngayon is let's not let's hold on to our zero waste habits kahit anong mangyari, kasi it's very important that we still continue it even with the pandemic. And of course, I think something that would advise the different hotels, especially if they're in an area na marami ding other hotels or marami ding other restaurants, I think it would help if you work together with the other hotels so that they get to see you work together with other hotel, discuss how can you best address or how can you best work on or manage the waste that you generate and coordinate it with the LGU. I think that would send a bigger or parang louder voice in terms of like the LGU, kasi they want clamor eh. Kasi if they hear na it's just from one hotel, okay. Pero if they hear that it's from a chain of hotels and all the different hotels in their area, then it sends a louder clamor. So I think it would really help them to do something about something about the special waste, because meron na rin tayong nakalagay na rin yan sa RA 9002 kung paano natin dapat i-address or i-manage yung gantong type of waste. So ayun lang naman yung sa akin. Dapat let's start with reduction or elimination of unnecessary plastics in mind first, and then we try to work on the waste management. So maraming salamat.
Okay, thank you very much, Miss Sharina. Looking at the recommendation, I think with the management of this kind of waste, the recommendation is to cooperate with the local government, and doing so would require also a lot of awareness campaign. I think there must also be a composition of organizing the group, because if you are going to go to the LGU individually, they will not listen. And sabi nga, it takes two to tango. No, much as you wanted to cooperate with them because that's their job, and yet they will not respond unless you are your big group. So that's where WWF, PSEPSD, and Co-op can actually work together on this. Something like put forward for action. So, Kiko, this is the last question that we have, right?
Yes, sir.
And maybe I'd like also to add on another question, privileged question siguro, no, as a facilitator of this. I'd like to ask Co-op or anyone from the speakers if this packaging of Shopee and Lazada, which is quite very rampant now these days, are they recycled one? Laminated ba yon or what? Or can it be recycled? And how
Yes.
do we manage that? Or do you already talk with Lazada or Shopee or this group? Kasi ang lakas ng generation nila ngayon, ha?
Ayaw nila makipag-usap sa amin.
Oh.
I tried. I'm gonna keep on trying. Okay. But anyway, yeah, it's recyclable. Now, yung type LDP yan, low density polyethylene. Yes, we can accept those. Kasi
I
dati
see.
pinigil na nga eh. Pero sabi ko, no, find a way to use it. So anyway, we found a way. Nalang kulit ko. So they're making bins out of it now.
Oh, kasi
Pwede.
sobrang dami, and it ended up for sure in the garbage out there in the environment.
Yes.
So, and with the shift of the flow of materials or flow of goods in the market, malaki yung role nila, no, itong big ano na to. So,
O June, baka you can help me get an audience with them.
why not? Let's work it out.
Correct.
Madali yon. We need to get kakampi.
Correct.
So madali yan. Okay.
Sige.
Sige. Okay. So Kiko, I think that concludes the Q&A portion, and thank you very much for the participation of our audiences in the Q&A, and I'd like to turn over the microphone to Kiko.
Thank you, Sergio.
Photo ops.
Yes. So yeah, before the closing remarks, if we may just kindly request our audience and speakers to open their cameras, show us your beautiful faces this lovely afternoon, and we'll have a photo up. So which will be facilitated by our team member Ezekiel Di Magiba. So Zeke, just let us give us a countdown on if we need to smile.
Okay, so I'll be taking the photos now. So for each panel, paon na lang po ng mga camera natin. So for panel 1, mag-screenshot na po. So 3, 2, 1, smile. And then sa next panel, 3, 2, 1. For the next panel, 3, 2, 1. Okay. So, ayun po, nakuha na po natin. Thank you very much po.
Thank you, Zeke. And thank you everyone for your participation in the photo op. So, here we are at the end of this training webinar. Apologies for a bit of the overtime, but we hope that you learned a lot and that we continue to become more responsible tourism advocates. We will make sure, of course, to share materials and recording of today's training so that again you can carry over what you've learned for and share to other people. So if there are any other questions for the speakers, please feel free to email us. And before we formally close, I'd just like to give some last points from the Transforming Tourism Value Chain Secretariat. So we are continuously advocating for a green recovery of our tourism industry. So for those tourism businesses who wish to receive technical support in resource consumption and greenhouse gas emissions tracking and monitoring, the TVC project, or the Transforming Tourism Value Chains project, would be happy to discuss further how else we can support you and your establishment. So we can also facilitate connecting you to the experts who spoke today for a deeper engagement regarding tackling the plastic problem. Please expect an email from us soon sharing the link to some handouts from WWF regarding the plastics initiative and some resources from the Tourism Value Chains project, including a report on tackling plastic pollution during COVID-19 recovery. So we will also communicate how you can get e-certificates from this training. So lastly, we invite everyone to join our recently launched campaign to phase out single-use plastics, which you may have seen in the website, in the Facebook pages of the Department of Tourism, WWF, or even our Facebook page, the Transforming Tourism Value Chains Facebook page. So this campaign is mainly for tips as guests, hotel managers, and staff on how to reduce your consumption, again, as an individual or as a business, of problematic single-use plastics. So stay tuned for our email to let you know how you can be an active partner in the campaign. So on behalf of the teams from PSEPSD, DOT, Clean Our Oceans Project, and WWF Philippines, we'd like to thank all of you for making this training a success. Thank you again to Sakberna for gracing us, of course, with her presence this afternoon. And thank you also to our panelists and experts for sharing your knowledge and insights with us. To our dear attendees, we hope you've learned a lot from this training about the harmful effects of plastic pollution and the know-how on what to do about it as individuals and as businesses. We look forward to seeing you again in the future, whether in another webinar or collaborating already with you directly to implement any sustainable tourism initiatives for the Philippines. So thank you all and have a good day. Happy holidays, everyone, and stay safe. Thank you.